Good evening. The January 22nd, 2025 Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals hearing is now in session. Good evening and welcome. I am Inta Malice, Vice Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Our Chair, Richard Kaplan, is joining us remotely. So in order to maintain a presence in the room, I will be chairing this meeting. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. Tonight, in addition to myself, we have members Richard Kaplan, who will be joining us a little bit later, Judy Freshman, Portia Clark, and Carol McCroskey. Also present is the professional staff, including Megan Ryan, Acting Zoning Administrator, Brett Goldberg, Associate Planner, Jillian Cordova, Acting Associate Planner, and Stephen Rissy, Zoning Prim Supervisor. Joining us later will be County Zoning Administrator Arlova Vaughn and Ann Golsky, who is an Assistant County Attorney. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you please place your mobile devices in silent mode. Before we begin tonight's hearing, I will discuss the powers of the board and the procedures for tonight's hearing. Then I'm basically going to be reading that off here. The board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set forth out in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests with the county board. This board does have the authority to do 3 things. First, the BZA can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. In order to approve a use permit, the zoning ordinance requires that this board follow certain standards and find that the proposal will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plan and the land use, zoning, and zoning-related policies of the county. In making these findings, the BZA shall consider whether the modifications will promote compatibility of the development with the surrounding neighborhood, because the structure's overall size, footprint size, and placement are similar to those of structures on the properties surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modifications will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary and in the public interest, including but not limited to the duration of the use permit. This board does not have the authority to grant use permits to modify requirements for expanding housing option developments. Second, the Board of Zoning Appeals can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by preponderance of the evidence that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and the need for the variance would not be shared generally by other properties, and such variances are not contrary to the purposes of the ordinance. Or they must find that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or that granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon at the effective date of the ordinance. Or it would alleviate hardship by granting reasonable modifications to a property or improvement thereupon requested by or on behalf of a person with disability. In all cases, the property for which the variance is being requested must have been acquired in good faith, and any hardship was not created by the applicant. The variance granted will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area. that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not so general or reoccurring in nature as to make reasonably practical the adoption of amendment to the ordinance, that the granting of the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning ordinance or the subdivision ordinance. The third area that the Board of Zoning Appeals has jurisdiction is that we shall hear and decide appeals of the zoning administrator or from any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any other administrative officer in the administration or enforcement of Title 15.2, Article 7 of the Code of Virginia. In exercising its powers, the board may reverse or affirm wholly or in part, or may modify an order, requirement, decision, or determination appealed. The determination of the administrative officer, zoning administrator shall be presumed correct by the BZA. The appellant has the burden of proof to rebut the presumption of correctness by a preponderance of the evidence. The board shall consider any applicable ordinances, laws, and regulations in making its decision and must base its judgment whether the administrative officer was correct. The concurring vote of a majority of the members of the board shall be necessary to reverse any order or determination. Now, on to tonight's hybrid meeting. For those of you that are participating in person, on the front table, you will find a QR code linking to a copy of the application, including the staff report for each case before us this evening. For those participating virtually, a copy of each application package can be found on the Arlington County BZA website. There is also a link in the chat for application packages. I recommend that if you have not yet seen the report for your case, that you review that report before your case is called. If you are attending virtually and lose connectivity, please reconnect with us by phone. If you are attending via Teams, please keep yourself muted and camera off until called upon. Turn off the sound on any devices around you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on the meeting command bar. County staff does not have the ability to unmute you. The meeting chat is active for technical support assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally or have been previously provided in writing for the record during the assigned public testimony period. This evening, staff will call each case and will provide a brief staff report and recommendation. Next, the board members will ask any questions of staff that they may have. Applicants or their representatives will be given an opportunity to make comments to support their application or appeal. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip online, or one is available on the table in front of the room. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speaker, but does not permit any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. For tonight's hearing, this board has deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for applicants of appeal, 5 minutes for applicants of permits and variances. We have deemed 3 minutes for representatives of organizations and 2 minutes for individuals as sufficient. After the board has gathered all the information we need and have discussed the case, we will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Please be respectful of the time allotted. This is a public forum, and tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county's website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether spoken or written, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the Circuit Court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. At some point, when Mr. Kaplan joins us, we will briefly pause and certify that he is in attendance virtually.
Ms. Mellis,
Yes.
I am on the line.
All right, I'll continue. Tonight, we have a request from BZA member Richard Kaplan to participate virtually. So I need to certify that. Sorry. Virginia law requires that an in-person quorum is required, and as such, I have noted for the record that we have an in-person quorum. Mr. Kaplan has requested to participate virtually because of childcare issues. Mr. Kaplan, can you please certify that you can hear me?
I do.
I certify that the people in this room can hear you. And that takes care of Mr. Kaplan. You're on board. I have one administrative matter here. We need to schedule a date for our work session. We had circulated two dates, March 12th and March 26th. Both dates were acceptable to both members and staff. Therefore, I'd like to propose that we adopt the first date of March 12th. Is that still acceptable? If it is,
No objection.
I'm going to request unanimous consent to adopt the 2025 BZA work session on March 12, 2025.
No objection.
No objections. Okay, so ordered. That's it for my administrative things. Any other matters that need to be handled before we start? Okay, in that case, let's call the first item.
Okay, first item is case number V-12013-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Stephen Tinter on behalf of Lauren Dorchette and Andrew Wright, the owners, to permit a setback of 14.5 feet, 13 feet to the eave, 14.5 feet to the wall, 13 feet to the eave, instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the eave, as required, 14.8 feet to the deck instead of 21 feet to the deck as required, regarding a two-story addition on deck in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 4027 20th Road North in Cherrydale. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
All right. Are there any questions for staff?
Yes. And I don't know who's the right person to answer this, but there's a discussion of the setback averaging. What setback would setback averaging result on in this location? It said that if you use setback averaging, it wouldn't be adequate for this project, but I'm wondering how close is it? Does anybody know?
I had the same question.
Yeah, if you don't.
Ms. McCroskey, for setback averaging, it would be the maximum allowed that they could be on the zoning ordinance would be 15 feet only, and 18 feet for a garage wall. And porches are not allowed for setback averaging.
Okay, so that's about 6 inches more that they need than setback averaging would allow. Is that right? Because setback averaging gives them 15 feet setback instead of 25. And they're asking for 14.5.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. In the summary of the request, and I think in the resolution as well, does it indicate from where the setback is being requested? I believe it's a left side setback, but I'm not sure I see that in the,
Yeah. It's a street setback, I think, from Quebec's,
From
North
Quebec
Quebec Street.
but street setback. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
From North Quebec Street.
All right. Um, So just to follow up on the setback averaging, is that routinely done? I actually think it's the first time I've seen it appear in a staff report.
It is an option that they can pursue if they want to pursue setback averaging.
What triggers it? Is it a staff kind of a review that's suggested, or?
It's a review, and they would also have to have plats for every single house, I think, on the street and determine the setback average for all those houses. So it might not always get what you want or need.
But it is allowed
It is a
by
process.
right under the ordinance.
Under the ordinance?
If they go through the process and show, and the zoning administrator can determine the average setback.
And-
Correct me if I'm wrong.
And so in this case, did the applicant initiate it, or did staff throw it out as an option?
Yeah, so usually we wouldn't really, like when we receive a BZA application, we typically don't get to the details of the review until we actually send them to the plan review team. And then at that time, once we do the complete analysis, then typically we would find that it's possible that they can go for a setback averaging, but since their request is less than what they're allowed, 15 feet on the averaging, they are like the only option they can go for if they want that setback would be a BZA application.
Okay. Then it says it would not, the staff report then says it would not impact the future street setback averaging calculations for other properties on the block. What does that mean?
Because currently, the existing house have a setback that is already less than the 15. So usually when you average a block, some of the blocks are not, are more than 15 feet. For this one, it doesn't really affect any future averaging for other properties that would like to do this, go for a determination for averaging.
Because you would use the 15 instead of the 14.5?
Because even if the whole averaging would be 14 for the whole block, they can only go for 15 because of the by right zoning ordinance.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I guess is the applicant with us?
I'm here to speak on behalf of Steve Pinter and representing Cook Brothers.
Could you give us your name, please?
Oh. My name is Phil Blevins. I'm here to speak on behalf of Steve Tinter and representing Cook Brothers. And to my left is Lauren Andrew, the homeowners.
I think you can raise
Oh,
that podium up a little bit. That'll help.
Yeah.
It may not get all the way up, but
As high as you want it.
there you go.
thank you.
So would you like to speak to your application?
Yeah, we like to ask that the board approve and follow the recommendation of the staff report. Also, like to speak kind of to I guess the setback averaging slightly, that was kind of, I think, brought up very like later in the process, I guess, to us, and it was just with the project looked like, it was going close. It was very close to the advertising period, not wanting to make a change or kind of have a change being shown different to the neighbors and having kind of showing all the neighbor support letters. I think if it's something that's kind of that hold up, like hang up on the board, I think clients and us will be willing to kind of like ask for a deferral and kind of have the opportunity to kind of look at that wholeheartedly. I guess, a little bit more if that's something you guys are really interested in. But overall, I think driving around the neighborhood, we kind of very much looked at kind of keeping this by right initially, but with kind of the existing house and kind of the layout as it is, we have to really destroy access to the existing first floor bedroom to get kind of any circulation that's functional within the space. So I think that was kind of where we looked around the neighborhood and saw that there were some other areas that had side setbacks for rear additions that matched kind of the existing feel of the street. And so that's where we looked at that, matching kind of the existing setback and not going further, maintaining the sight lines that kind of exist currently and respecting that of the neighborhood.
So when you say you were matching the existing setback, you were kind of matching it, but to that bump out window that.
Well, that actually it's a full bay that has a foundation below that carries into the
Okay.
basement. So it's not an Oriole window that has no floor to it.
right,
So that
okay.
actually has interior floor spaces on all the
Uh-huh.
floors, basement, first and second floor. So I think that, and then if you look at the elevations, it kind of looks to keep the feel of the exterior bay that kind of goes along that, and to address kind of that being a rear corner that's from a predominant street, to kind of create another kind of corner, kind of presentable and enjoyable entrance into the neighborhood. So,
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you say that again? Just what corner are you talking about? When
I
you
guess it's, well, when you're driving down North Quebec Street,
Right.
you're coming from a major intersection from there. So I guess that's the way you really enter this neighborhood, from facing the back of the house, not the front of the house.
Okay,
So that's where we're looking at, with that rear corner of that addition, kind of matching kind of that front bay that you were referring to, and kind of keeping
Right.
that style and language that kind of exists throughout the house and the existing neighborhood.
okay. And it's, we're talking about small amounts here.
Yeah.
But it does seem to me that it would make more sense to at least keep the line of that wall where the addition is being created at the same location as the wall is now, whereas you go out to where that bay is.
Part of that was, I could speak a little bit of that, was the porch has like its minimal footprint in the sort of sense to allow for the egress in there and kind of some small furniture. And also the kitchen is limited in its size, and like what is it? The allowable space for just like egress and circulation for there, we kind of kept to a minimal. So that's where we really try to keep things. If you look on the right-hand side, we kind of really respect, like, we try to respect that right-hand side, not asking for an encroachment on that side. And that's what, like, we limited ourselves to that left-hand setback kind of to what the existing house kind of was, and try to, so.
Ms. Ryan, do you see Mr. Kaplan? Because I don't see him, so I don't know if he has questions, I would be able to.
I am here. I don't have questions at the moment.
He's the green circle?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a pic,
There he
You-
is.
go ahead.
I was
Mr.
going to say I have my
Kaplan.
camera on, so you should see me.
That's better. Do you have anything you want to add, Mr. Kaplan?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So I'm understanding that what you said was because the averaging issue option came late in the process and you were already well ahead of advertising, you decided to come here with your original proposal rather than have to start all over again.
And yeah, and that's why I think we weren't unsure about what as Jillian was referring to, not sure what the end result of that average would be. So like if we were limited to the 15, or say a 16-foot setback is what the averaging determined, like losing that 2 feet or so from the project would make like the kitchen would not work and the function the way it is. Like we would lose a lot of the functionality that of the addition as it's designed. And that's why I said, like, we were trying to keep the circulation in that space limited, maintaining, like, not going giant, like 6-foot walkways or corridors, but maintaining that 36, like, comfortable space, but not trying to build something, as that the respect of the neighborhood and kind of, and I think there in the staff report also mentions there's a few like additions that were built by, as well, that were closer, that were also rear additions, on corner lots that were built less than 10 feet away. So I think that's kind of where driving around the neighborhood, seeing that, and they have bushes that are obstruction that are closer as well. So I think it's kind of we felt that we were in line with what the neighborhood was as one of the requirements for the BZA application. That we felt our application met all three requirements for it.
And just to confirm, the result of the averaging was 15 feet?
For this case, they have to submit a determination, and then the zoning board, the zoning administrator will have to determine that based on the requirements for an averaging.
So the averaging hasn't not been determined?
That's correct. But
I
are
thought
you
somebody-
saying that the maximum or minimum, the farthest it could, the least setback you could have under averaging in the district is 15?
Correct, yeah.
That's
It's
what-
But you
even
don't
if
know
they-
that that's what it would be here.
Right.
Okay.
The least or the most, which way?
Well, that's why I wasn't certain, but the
closest.
smallest setback you could have would be 15 feet
Okay.
under the setback
The
averaging,
smallest,
if it calculated to that much.
okay. Any other questions for the applicants? Thank you. I think the discussion's with the board.
Okay. Yeah.
Any thoughts on where we want to go with this project?
I'm prepared to make a motion if one will be posted for me. I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-12013-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
Is there a second?
I'll
I will
second.
second.
Whoop. Ms. Clark beat you to it. Is there any further discussion?
I'll just make one comment. I have a hard time with this one, just because it does, I mean, the averaging is just more for me is the comparison because the house is already almost to that distance. And I've heard what the applicant has said about functionality. It would seem to be preferable that you could keep that wall at least flat, but I also, I think there's good reasons and I appreciate that a lot of thought went into this before they got here. So I'll probably support it, even though I have some qualms about it.
Any other comments? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman? Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion granting the use permit with conditions passes at 5-0. Thank you. Will you call the next case?
Yes, the next case is V-12014-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Lucy and Raymond Beednell, the owners to permit a street setback of 16.8 feet to the porch and deck, 15.4 feet to the porch eave instead of 21 feet to the porch and deck, 19.5 feet to the porch eave as required from 23rd Street South right-of-way regarding a new front porch and deck on an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5013 23rd Street South in Claremont. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. Go ahead,
oh.
Ms. McCroskey.
Why is, I think I know, but why is, if a variance was previously approved in 1996 to allow the existing front porch to be 16 feet from the right of way, why do we need this approval now?
I believe the porch that they're proposing now is slightly different shape and everything. It's not exactly building exactly the plans that were provided from the prior variance.
And the proposed porch is going to be set back further from the street than the approved variance allowed for the existing front porch.
It encroaches less.
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But it will be larger.
I believe so. And if Julian wants to add,
Wider.
she wrote the staff report if there's any details.
Is that right, Jillian? It's just going to be larger, but not go as far into the setback, which is what we're concerned with.
Yes, correct.
And there's no other setbacks affected. It's just the front setback, which
Correct.
encroaches less.
Mhm.
Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant with us? Please approach. Good evening.
Good evening to you all. I appreciate you all giving me the time. My name is Ray Beednell. I'm one of the two homeowners for the property. If you'd like me to speak my piece, I'm happy to do that.
You have 5 minutes.
As you had mentioned earlier, Ms. McCoskey,
That's
I
fine.
apologize.
Don't worry.
Yes, there was already a porch there. The porch was frankly rotting off the house. If you look at the current, not the proposed, but the current plat, you'll notice that there is a U-turn. And the only access to my front door is to go up the driveway and make a U-turn to get into the driveway, which means that I, especially given the current weather, have a very steep driveway that is covered in sheets of ice. Everybody in my family has had some issues with that. Our intent, as mentioned, was we wanted to make the porch just a little bit wider in an attempt to not put it as far out into the street. And there would be some steps in the front that would allow us to access our front door, which we can't currently do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for the applicant? I guess the discussions with the board. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yes, this is a case where there's a previous variance been granted, and there's no other setbacks being asked for. So it's just a different design from what was previously approved. Ms. McCroskey?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest, actually, I'll make a motion if that's okay with everybody. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V1201424 UP1, subject to the conditions listed and with one additional provision as the sixth paragraph in the resolution to state that whereas a variance was approved in 1996, allowing an existing front porch to be 16 feet from the right-of-way line. So that's just adding another finding.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
You have a second for your motion, Ms. McCroskey? Did staff catch the additional condition? Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the use permit passes 5-0. And I meant to mention its other case, very good neighborhood outreach. We appreciate that. Ms. Ryan, will you call the next case?
Next case is V-12015-24-UP-1. A use permit request by Rob Zimmerman on behalf of Armani and Jacqueline Mahuzi, the owners, to permit a rear setback of 8.1 feet to the main building wall, 5.6 feet to the building eave, 14.9 feet to the porch, 8.1 feet to the areaway, 5.1 feet to the window wells and planter box, and 5 feet to the stoop and screened AC units instead of 25 feet to the main building wall, 21 feet to the building eave, porch, area way, window wells, planter box and stoop, and 8 feet to the screened AC units as required from the rear property line regarding a new one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 1854 North Columbus Street in John M. Langston. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution withdrawing the use permit request.
Ms. Ryan, why, can you describe why the request is being withdrawn?
It's no longer considered an interior lot after additional research that we had time to look into. It's considered a corner lot, so they wouldn't need that rear setback relief. They can do it by right.
Okay. Is the applicant with us by any chance?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Where are you?
Ms. Mellis?
Yes. Oh,
I'm
did
sorry,
you
could
have
I
a
ask
question
a
for
quick
staff?
question of
I'm
staff?
sorry.
I am old enough to remember when staff recommended that the board did not need to pass a resolution for a withdrawal. Is there a reason for the change?
This one, the applicant didn't automatically request the withdrawal, so staff is asking in it, the report.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will
Okay,
probably
so-
hear from the applicant shortly.
All right, so I think that's important in that, because if the applicant, and maybe they'll say something different here today, but
Right.
if the applicant has not requested a withdrawal, I don't think that the BZA can withdraw the application. But why don't we go ahead and hear from the applicant and then
Right.
see where we stand.
Okay. You, Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, just hearing that, I didn't know I was allowed to ask for a withdrawal. Otherwise, I would have. So I don't have any other motivation than being told that I had to attend this. But yeah, when we submitted plans for this house to the county, we complied to all zoning rules in R6, at least in terms of setbacks and lot coverage. We didn't know that there was insufficient recorded street frontage in one direction. So we were told we had to come to BZA to have that approved. But then after we submitted the application, the county ended up finding documentation that an easement had actually been approved at Arlington for the street. It was just never properly recorded. So I was told, since we had already submitted, that we just had to, follow through with this meeting, which is why I'm here, but happy to answer any of their questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ms. Crosby.
So I guess my question is, Mr. Zimmerman, is it your intent to request that you be permitted to withdraw your application for this use permit?
I believe so. I mean, I don't fully understand doing it one way versus another, but my understanding from whoever was in zoning that talked to me about the lead up to today, that as I'm thinking about it, I didn't think I had the ability to withdraw, because I think somewhere that means that I would get refunded money from Arlington for the BZA application cost, which would be great. I mean, we would love to have that back, but I was just under the impression that we couldn't withdraw because it had already been reviewed and we were not able to get that money refunded. But I mean, I just want to get it approved. So
Right.
I'm not sure what I should say. If you can
Well-
withdraw it, then sure, I would love to have it withdrawn. That sounds great.
So, and I think I don't know about the refund situation because it was advertised, I guess, but did you want to?
That was something we talked to Mr. Zimmerman before we advertised it, to let him know that we needed more time for research for staff. And
Okay,
that if he wanted to move forward, there would be no refund for the application because we need to advertise and write the staff report. And he seemed okay with that. So that's why we went.
Okay, but the fact is that his application can now be approved without any action by the BZA.
Yeah, he can submit his building permit and move forward with
Okay.
the research that was found.
I think what we probably just need is the applicant to be clear that he's requesting the withdrawal, then the Board of Zoning Appeals can approve it, and then you can move forward with your project under the by right process, Mr. Zimmerman, according to staff.
Okay, well, that being the case, I'd like to request that this be withdrawn.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I
Go ahead, Ms. McCroskey.
I was home too much in the cold weather. So I have a resolution that revises what was provided to us. So if we
I'm sorry,
look
can I
at,
interrupt?
pardon?
Mr. Kaplan?
I'm sorry, can I interrupt for a second? Do we need to accept the withdrawal? Because I know in the past when the board has just let an applicant withdraw and that was the end of it. So do we need a resolution?
So we've done it obviously both ways. We have accepted, there has been a time when we voted on withdrawals.
Right.
Accepted withdrawals, I guess that would be the question. I do think you're correct that in recent history, it was not necessary.
Ms.
I think, the fact that it's on our agenda, I
Ms.
think
Miles,
Ms. Freshman.
my understanding of all of this is that the staff recommended it, the applicant concurs, but didn't actually request it. And I think 5 minutes or more of that is enough. Whether or not we have done it in the past, why can't we just approve the motion?
Well, I think we're just trying to make sure we do figure out what the right thing to
What's
do
appropriate.
is. Especially going forward, if this is not something that's clear to us, then maybe we need to research it offline at some point and figure out, agree among ourselves and staff, what is the right way to do this. I have no problem with moving to withdraw the application. I'm willing to hear your motion.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution accepting withdrawal of the application for use permit V12015-24-UP-1. Then the first paragraph under proposed resolution will remain as it is. And then the second paragraph will read, and I can give this to staff after I'm done, whereas zoning staff has advised the applicant that, and then those words are added, then no modification of the placement requirements by the Board of Zoning Appeals is needed. And then I would add a whereas paragraph that states, whereas the applicant has, before the BZA at its January 22, 2025 public hearing, that the applicant be permitted to withdraw its application. And then the last paragraph would read, now therefore be it resolved that the BZA hereby accepts the applicant's withdrawal of use permit application number V-12015-24-UP-1.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any further discussion? I do think, we need to clarify among all parties how we want to proceed in the future just to simplify things. How we advise the applicant, what their options are.
It might be something we could take up at our work
And
session.
it could be something we discuss at our work session. That would be an excellent idea. Hearing no further discussion, I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman? Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to accept the withdrawal passes 5-0. Thank you. That concludes your case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Ryan, will you call the next item?
Yes, case number V-12016-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Gerardo Perez on behalf of Matthew Welch and Akiko Sajkaka, the owners, to permit rear setback 11.8 feet to the porch, 10.7 feet to the porch eaves instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eaves as required regarding a new rear screen porch to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 1610 North Monroe Street in Cherrydale. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the use permit request. An alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA see fit to approve the request with conditions. And we did receive supplemental material for this case, which includes a summary, an existing plat, and then 3 letters of support. The 3 letters of support were included with the initial application, but accidentally didn't get uploaded and included in the staff report.
Are there any questions for staff? I had one as well. There's a stormwater facility maintenance and monitoring agreement in the staff report. Was that submitted by the applicant as part of his application, and was there relevance for us?
Did you have anything to add to that, Jillian? Sorry, since you were at the
Oh,
report.
I think it's just a document that the owner has for the existing easement that they have in the front of the property. That it's a part of a park which is owned by the county board of Arlington. It's just a documentation that they have
That
from
they
the
they
county.
submitted it.
Yeah, they submitted that.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
And so staff's recommendation is denial of this use permit.
That's correct.
And that's because you don't find that it's similar to other structures in the area.
Based on the research that we found, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Is the applicant with us tonight? Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your time. I also have some other supplemental information. I have 6 copies.
Okay. Could you state your name?
My name is Roberto Perez, authorized agent representing the owners, Matthew Walsh and his wife.
Okay. You may give them to Miss Ryan, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so we did go over the staff reports, and we see, they have this concern about the setbacks not being compatible with the neighborhood.
Can you, I'm sorry, can you just try to put the microphone up a little closer?
Okay.
We're having trouble
Right here?
hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we read the staff report. We see how they have a concern about this not being compatible with the neighborhood. Right now, the porch setback is being proposed at 11.8 feet. Now, we want to say that the staff did find some nearby properties that demonstrated some flexibility with this setback. There was an 8.3-foot building wall at the rear and 2 decks, one at 13 feet and the other one 14.2 feet at the rear lot line. So that was a setback. So this established kind of a precedent for reducing the setbacks in this area. Now, the owners, they're looking for a modest modification of this deck. It's going to stay within the allowable lot coverage of 35.8. The maximum is 40, and also the building coverage will remain below the minimum. But the proposal is 1,940, and the allowable is 2,520. So, with this concern about the staff has that their similar setbacks for decks is not compatible for this porch. Seems a little bit arbitrary to me. When you look at a screen porch, it's lightweight in design. It takes up the same space as a deck would. And really, this right here would not harm any property. The staff has made that clear. There's no adverse impacts to the health, the safety, to other properties in the area. And also, we have these letters of support. The rear neighbor who's going to be impacted the greatest, they all are okay with this proposal moving forward. So again, another aspect that's not really brought up in the staff report has to do with the lot, the way it's configured. There is a plat that was dated by the county. It's a zoning approved final plat when this was built, August 11, 2016. It has a setback on the front of 28.7, and the minimum was 25. So this even restricts even further their rear lot. So this right here kind of, again, opens the door where, okay, if this was closer to the front, then they will have more use of the property. And really, this is a modest application they're trying to get. If their neighbors all around the neighborhood want to get this done, it wouldn't be no problem, because most of the lots in that neighborhood are just really long versus their lot, which is more like square shaped. And also, the Welshes are looking for this because the park being right in the back during the summer, spring season, even into the fall, the mosquitoes are very bad. That's what they say. They have a young family, they can never enjoy the outside without just being attacked by the mosquitoes. So this would kind of protect their family. So again, the staff talks about this deck being non-conforming, or they show other properties that have non-conforming decks, showing that there is a precedent where you can reduce the setback. And we think it's kind of arbitrary. The staff says that it may not be compatible. So I'm not really sure what that means, that it may not be. Maybe it is. I think it's almost like subjective on how you view it. So I did provide the staff with some pictures so they can see, kind of like how the lot is laid out. And on the inside, there'll be some more pictures there for you guys just to kind of look at. So I am open to any questions you guys might have. And the owner's also, he's online, if you have any questions for them as well.
Thank you.
Can I?
Ms. McCroskey?
How big is this deck that's out there now? Do you know the dimensions of it by any
I
chance?
think it's 16 by 12.
Yeah.
16 by 12, and the proposed porch is 16 by 16.
Yeah. So this would be
Okay.
a 4-foot
Okay.
extension to the existing deck.
Any other questions for the applicant? Back to Ms. McCroskey's question. Is there a reason that you've enlarged it past the size of the deck?
I can maybe have the homeowner answer. What he told me is that, this would be kind of like the minimum for them to have full enjoyment of their porch by having this extension. But if he's available online, I would be open to him to answer that question.
If he wishes to speak, he may.
Okay.
Hello, yes, this is Matthew Welch, one of the owners. I can concur with Gerardo. We worked with a design company to design a space that we thought would best suit the family, entertainment, and whether that's eating or seating. And so that's how we came to this, what we believe is an optimal size for the family.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Can I add one thing?
I'm sorry.
Can I add one more thing?
Okay.
Yeah. So the owner, I forgot to mention, is that we would like to know either way, if this is not approved, what would be allowable? Is there maybe some kind of adoption where, okay, can't allow this kind of improvement, but maybe what can we do to maybe, what would you guys allow? So
We'll consider that in our discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Discussions with the board.
Just a question for staff, if is the existing 12 by 16 acceptable? Or is there a problem with that? In other words, if I personally don't have an issue with this particularly, but if the alternative, as the applicant's representative asked for what would be acceptable, can we presume that the existing deck dimensions are, or is there a problem with that as well?
I assume that the enlargement is towards the back and not from side to side.
Yes, because it's square.
Yeah.
Right.
Ms. Malice?
Mr. Kaplan?
I might be a little, this might have been said before, or it might be in the staff report and I am having trouble finding it. The existing deck, was that built by right? Like, it's above 8 inches, right? So wouldn't that have needed a use permit for the existing deck to be built?
That's an excellent question. Does staff know the answer?
Yes, ma'am. So when we did the research for this, when the house was built and the approved plans we were looking at the approved plans, it looks like that deck that they have right now was approved by right. But when we were looking at it for elevation, I think it was missed by zoning reviewer at that time. But because it was approved,
Right.
it was accepted when they submitted their final survey because it was during the review process.
That
So
makes a tough case even more tougher for me.
yeah, so you've blessed it. So staff has
blessed it, right.
blessed
So
it that was
does that
built in
mean,
error.
yeah, does that mean now that even if they reduce the porch to the size that of the existing deck, it would be, still be an issue?
The deck
Exactly
would-
my next question.
So the existing deck would be non-conforming since it doesn't meet the 21-foot rear setback, so they could keep their existing non-conforming. If they were gonna put a porch on there and change it, they would need this use permit to keep that existing footprint, but then and change it to a porch because they're gonna add a roof and everything to it as well.
Could you repeat the first part of that? It does conform to the 21-foot?
It does not.
It
It does
does
not
not.
meet the required 21-foot setback, but it's an existing non-conforming feature. So they can keep it as long as they're.
They can
not
keep it
changing.
as is, but if they want to build on it, they need.
They
relief.
need this use permit for the setback.
Even
relief,
if
even
it's
if
a
they kept
smaller
the exact,
size.
yeah, because it would be closer. And then they would be adding a roof for that porch.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful clarification.
To me,
So-
this is a tough case.
Mr. Kaplan.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Malice. I don't know that my comments will be helpful to anyone, including myself. But to me, that this is a pretty tough case for me because we have a deck here that is, I guess, technically non-conforming, technically built by right back when it was built, and now we want to expand the non-conforming even more to make it more non-conforming. So I'm kind of struggling with that. I'd probably be more supportive if we were keeping the existing footprint and just maintaining the nonconformity and adding a roof to it. But I can be swayed by my colleagues.
Yeah, I think it often our cases come down to justification. You know, in this case, the justification is the applicant simply wants a bigger deck, a bigger screen porch. And it is contrary to our zoning ordinance. And so a case has to be built as to why that should be permitted. And staff has not been able to build a case that it's even compatible with other properties in the area. So that makes it a tougher hurdle.
Staff or the applicant.
Exactly.
So I will just, from my perspective, I agree. I think this is a difficult one. I am inclined to vote against it. I do think, given I have generally taken the approach that when there's something existing there, like this deck, if they wanted to screen it in and make it into a porch, that would likely be something I would support just because it doesn't seem to increase the nonconformity. I will mention that one of the things that is allowed for porches to go into the setback to be setback 21 feet from the street is because they also have to be at the first floor level. And it's not clear to me, and I'd only mention this in case this comes up in another context, but it's not clear to me from the drawings we see that this meets that standard, that it is at the first floor level. It seems as though it's going maybe another half story up, just from the elevations we have. They go close to the windows above. So anyway, that's my perspective. I'm not sure that I can support the proposal as it is, but I probably would be able to get there if it wasn't getting bigger, given that the deck already exists.
I'd be interested in the views of my colleagues on this question. The applicant has requested, I guess, possibly a deferral to revise the plans. If there's not an inclination to approve this as submitted, that would be an option. Mr. Kaplan.
Yeah, Ms. Mouse, I was just maybe we should reach out to the applicant and see if, plans within the existing footprint would be even acceptable for them. Is that worth a deferral, right?
Okay, yeah, I believe he asked what would need to be done, but we can clarify that, yes.
Right, now they have an answer to that. So then,
Okay.
we could see what the applicant has to say about that.
All right.
I think it should be made, the point should be made, though, that even if the existing deck morphed into a porch, given its status, I mean, it's protected as it is, but given its status, it's not guaranteed.
That's right. It's not guaranteed that staff would concur,
Exactly.
and that would require
And it's up
analysis on staff's part.
And then it would come back to us for review. But it sounds like there might be, again, we haven't seen the plans, but it sounds like there might be some support amongst the board to allow this to be built, covered over.
Could we invite Mr. Perez to come back? Mr. Perez, there seems to be sentiment to not want to approve this as is. We haven't taken a vote, so I don't know for sure, but that seems to be a direction here. We have the option of deferring this project for you to revise the plans. Again, I don't know if staff would support your proposal. That could influence our decision as well, but we could give you the option to reconsider your proposal, talk to staff, and decide whether you wish to modify it, whether you wish to come back as proposed, or some other choice that you want to make. Would that be in the realm of something you would support?
Yeah, I would like to hear from the owner as well. And if it is something that could be done, I hear you guys saying that the deck is non-conforming as is, would the board be able to vote for approval for it to stay? Like, okay, without having to defer, like approve today, like?
We would not vote today.
Okay.
Okay, because staff would need to analyze whatever proposal that you have. We would need new drawings to show, what it is you're proposing.
Okay, if the owner can just weigh in, I'll be okay with it, but it's his house, so. Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Welch?
It's Mr. Welch.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I mean, we would take a deferral. I'd have to speak to the designers.
Okay. All right. Colleagues, thank you.
All right.
Sounds like we would entertain a deferral to give the applicant an option to reconsider his proposal in light of the discussion and further discussion with staff. Mr. Freshman.
Case V-12016-24-UP1, I move deferral of the case to the March BZA board meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. McCroskey to defer this matter to the March BZA hearing. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman? Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to defer passes 5-0. Thank you. Ms. Ryan, will you call the next item?
Yes, case number V-12017-24-UP-1, use permit request by James and Renee Carton. The owners to permit a street setback of 19 feet to the porch, 19 feet to the porch eve instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eve, as required from Fifth Road North regarding new front porch on existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5931 Fifth Road North in Boulevard Manor Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? This is item 5. I had one question in the discussion. Whose staff report is this? It's not Ms. Ryan's staff report. There was in the discussion, there was, I guess it's on page 4, there was a discussion about why approving this would conform to master plans and land use. And it included discussions about previous BZA approvals. And I was a little troubled by that only because I don't know that previous BZA approvals are evidence of county policy. In other words, we don't set policy. And so sort of to say that the BZA, to give examples that the BZA gave certain, and it may not be what you intended, but I just wanted to clarify that our past decisions are not policy that got, in any way or shape. We're just trying to implement policy. Okay. Because it was all kind of thrown in together. That was my only question for staff. Is the applicant with us?
I am. Good evening.
Where are you? Hi.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Renee Carton.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, we're just asking, without the variance, the porch would only be about 4 feet wide. And then, taking into consideration the structure, the actual usable space would be less, which I don't believe would be very usable for us to proceed.
Oh, sorry, you just froze. You gonna come back? Happens at the worst times, doesn't it? Mr. Kaplan, you're with us. It's not the system, it's the applicants, I'm afraid.
Nope, I am here. The applicant has frozen on my remote computer too.
Ms. Carton, you have frozen. If you can hear us, you can dial in and speak to us. I'm going to give you a minute to see if that's an option. And if it doesn't work, I think we'll move on to the next case and come back to you. Sometimes you don't know if you're I think she's going to try. She's logged off.
She might be getting right back on.
Okay. Can you admit her? Hey,
There she is.
are you back?
So sorry. Of course, as soon as I start speaking, our Wi-Fi dropped off. So I am back on my cell phone. I guess in brief, so I apologize for that. So in brief, we're just asking for the additional 2 feet to allow for usable space, and it also works with the design of the roof for aesthetics to increase the curb appeal of our house. Simply put.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Get discussions with the board. Ms. McCroskey.
Yeah, so I'll make a statement, which I make regularly. We frequently get requests for 6-foot porches to encroach into the setbacks. And in fact, the zoning ordinance and the county board's legislative actions have allowed for encroachments of 4 feet for porches, and then allowed for them generally when they don't go above the first floor of the house. And therefore, I've pretty consistently voted against these porches just because I think they don't reflect the zoning policy of the county. But I know that many people support them and that they are, that 6 feet is not really an unreasonable size, but 4 feet is what's set forth in the ordinance. So I will vote against this for those reasons.
Thank you, Ms. McCroskey. Are there other comments?
Miss Mellis, may I?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. I see you.
I somewhat share my colleagues' sentiments, and you know, it does seem like this board is getting a deluge of these 6-foot porch requests. But you know, squaring the two you know, use permit provisions that the county board has given us has always been a challenge, right? The compatibility versus master plan. And in this case, just looking at the tax zoning map, it does appear that the neighboring 2 houses have you know, what appears to be a 2-ish foot bump out, being 5927 and 5923. So for this one, I would support for that reason, because 2 neighboring properties have that, and so it is. I'm going to let the compatibility override the weighing of the master plan concept as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. I think this is an ideal example of why this needs to get straightened out. Here is the property with a standard conforming 25-foot setback. There's no nonconformity. There's no other exception other than a 4-foot porch is not really practical. But there's an inconsistency because had this property have no other porches, as Mr. Kaplan indicated, that appeared to be 6 foot, then this would be non-conforming or not compatible. That seems highly arbitrary that this property wouldn't be granted a use permit, but if you happen to have some others. And so, you know, I align myself with Ms. McCroskey that this needs to be straightened out in terms of what is the will of the county board, but because as the situation exists right now, it's really not rational. That some people get a porch if the neighbors already got a porch, but if your neighbors didn't get a porch, you don't get a porch. That doesn't seem fair in any way. And so I think the Board of Zoning Appeals does need to pursue this with our lawmakers to figure this out, because I don't think it's the result that anybody wants. That said, if there are no other comments, I'll call the roll.
Well, do we have a motion?
Oh, we don't have a
yeah,
motion, sorry.
And I'll just add it, and you know, I agree that this needs to be sorted out, but in the meantime, it's kind of up to us to be able to sort out using the standards that the county board has given us. But I agree wholeheartedly that this should be an issue that the county board needs to provide clarity on.
Is that a motion?
I can make a motion.
Thank you.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V-12017-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Freshman to grant the use permit with conditions. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
No.
Chair votes no. The motion passes 3-2. Enjoy your porch.
Thank you. And hopefully I have Wi-Fi soon.
Yeah, it always happens at the worst time. Believe me, you're not alone. That concludes this matter. Ms. Ryan, would you like to call the next item, please?
Yes, case number V-12018-24-UP-1, use permit request by Brush Arbor Home Construction LLC on behalf of Graham, Julia, Lawrence, and Barbara McBride to permit a right side setback of 4.1 feet to the stormwater planter boxes instead of 6 feet as required, to permit a left side setback of 4.4 feet to the stormwater planter boxes instead of 5 feet as required, regarding after-fact approval for 4 stormwater planters, 8 inches or higher above finished grade on a new one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 3920 7th Street South, in Alcova Heights. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. And note there is supplemental material for this case. We received 2 signed or received, I think, 1 letter signed by 2 adjacent neighbors for this case.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Is there questions for staff? I take it this came up at wall check at the final inspection, or at what point in the process?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me.
As I recall, the initial building application or the initial submissions stated that these boxes would be less than 8 inches above.
Right.
And then they couldn't be built that way and do their job.
Yeah, I believe it was when the final elevations came in, we saw that they were above the 8 inches. And that's when it got caught with the final plat.
In the discussion, in the staff report, it indicates that should we reduce the size, require that they be reduced, that they may no longer be effective and other measures might need to be taken?
Potentially.
If they were approved at 8 inches, weren't they considered effective then?
I think it was way the elevation was showing those planter boxes. But I guess reducing the overall plant size of the planter box could reduce its overall effectiveness.
But at 8 inches, it was deemed sufficient because that was what was in the approved plan.
Above grade, yeah. So that's what it was shown on the elevations for above. It was
Okay,
below
8 inches above grade. Now it's considerably higher. But it doesn't need to be in order to be effective as a stormwater planter?
It's kind of outside of our scope since we don't approve the stormwater planters.
I only comment because it said that might be an option if we didn't approve this.
I don't think we have all that information, but from what I read, it seems to me that when the initial application was made, they weren't paying enough attention to how big they needed these things to be.
They being Staff?
Whoever
or-
submitted, no, I would say probably the engineers that submitted the plans, but maybe we can hear from the applicant.
Okay.
They can explain.
Any other questions for staff? All right, is the applicant with us?
Thank you for being here on this cold and freezing and late evening. My name is Julia McBride. I'm one of the owners of the home. I'm also the designer of the home. So I can speak to the fact that this home was designed.
Are you with Graham?
This is Graham
you.
McBride, my husband, one of the other owners of the home. The house was designed to be a house that we will live out the rest of our days in, that was architecturally appropriate for the neighborhood, that met every requirement. As a designer myself, that's important to me. I believe in the ordinances and the purpose of the ordinances. And we thought we had done that until we brought in the dirt. And that was where things went a little bit sideways. And our engineers and builder can probably speak more to the technical part of that. But our understanding is that it comes down to the level of dirt around the planter boxes, and that if it were raised up higher, then we would be in compliance, because it would make the planter boxes appear to be more landscaping than house. However, if we do that, and everything is built according to the architectural and structural, so we complied with the architectural and structural. It's the grading that became the issue, I believe. If we raise the dirt around the planter boxes, it creates this slope that, one, makes it impossible for us to walk from the front to the back of the house because of how tightly the houses are situated on the block. It would make it impossible for service providers, the county, if they need to access the power lines in the back, and unsafe for our kids to run from the back to the front. It would also create a slope that encourages water runoff into the neighbors' yards. And one of the neighbors has an adjoining or a French drain that adjoins our property that we already had challenges around during the build. We rebuilt part of it for them in good faith because, you know, we wanted to make sure our neighbors were happy. We don't want to create additional water runoff to their property that may further tax a drain that wasn't built to handle that. And we certainly don't want to have to go back to the drawing board on planter boxes that we thought we were building. We had every intention of building to code and to meet stormwater requirements. They're, 10 feet down under the ground. It would be very costly to rebuild them. It would also, I don't know how we would then rebuild them to stay in compliance with the stormwater management and what that would look like. The way that they were done was, like I said, in compliance with architectural and structural, and done to be architecturally appropriate for the neighborhood and the region, and to add value to the neighborhood and the region. So really, it's a matter, our understanding of how high the dirt is around the planter boxes, and to be in compliance, to raise that dirt level defeats the whole purpose, I think, of the ordinances, which is to, protect the county, our neighbors, and ourselves. It would create more problems than it solves. That's my understanding of it. Anyway.
Can I ask
Mr.
that you
McCoskey?
to just give us a sort of the practical, here's what happened. We
Yeah.
submitted, because from what, and I read these reports, but it's the reports indicated that the submissions for the application showed that the boxes would be no more than 8 inches above
Ground.
And that's because that was assuming the landscaping change to add the dirt.
Right. So the dirt was then, like I said, everything was built the way it was supposed to be. We followed the architectural and the structural. And then when we came to the grading, the very last thing, you bring in the dirt around the finished building. We realized that if we brought the dirt in and up to that level, we'd be creating a slope. You can see the narrow passageway and you can walk past it now. If you brought it up higher, you would have to then create a slope that angled right down into the neighbors' yards, and we wouldn't be able to walk past. It'd be too steep of a slope to walk past, to get a lawnmower past, for our kids to run past, et cetera. So we'll do it if we have to, but it would then make our house impassable on the sides. So we thought we would ask for permission to leave the dirt where it is before we did that.
Mr. Kaplan. You're muted. Of course.
Thank you. This question might be for both the applicant and staff. But is that, if the applicant were to do that solution and, dump a couple truckloads of dirt in that area to regrade the property, is that something that the county would even allow? Because it would strike me as, the county typically won't allow properties to regrade their property on a whim like that for exactly the reasons the applicant has suggested. Right, so I guess for the applicant, have you had discussions with the county and they're going to let you do that? And then for our staff, is that something you could weigh in on?
For regrading, they're allowed, you can do regrading, but they have to go back for an application to show that on the civil plan. And it has to be checked by Department of Environmental Services for land disturbance. But a property can be regraded if they want to, but it has to go to the process with the civil plans.
And so so I guess you can't speak to obviously whether you think that something like adding 2 or 3 feet of sloped directly into the neighbor's property would be allowed, right? That's not something that your office would weigh in on.
For zoning, we don't have a problem with that. It might be an issue for a different department, like Department of Environmental Services.
Yeah, I mean, my layman understanding for that is that stuff like that is usually not allowed. But we don't have any expertise here, and so for the applicant, is that something you have had discussions with the environmental group on whether doing that is even allowed?
I'll let Scott and Melody speak to that. They're also here virtually. They're with Brush Arbor, and they have been communicating directly with county staff. I just gave the extent of our layperson's knowledge of the situation. We thought it was a matter of the dirt around, and we thought everything was built to the plans, the approved plans, and to our understanding, it was built to the approved plans. We absolutely would have changed it had we thought it wasn't being built to the approved plans. So I'll let Scott and Melody speak to their communications with the rest of the county offices on that.
Of course. Would you identify yourself?
Hi, Scott Anderson with Brush Arbor. So the grading plan actually calls for the dirt to be within 8 inches of the top of the planter box. So it's currently graded. We realized that was too steep of a slope and wasn't going to work very well with the lot, and that's when we dropped the grade. And then we found out after the fact when we went for our final survey that we were encroaching too far with dropping that grade within 8 inches of the planter box.
So DES has approved a much steeper grade for that area, and your choice was to try this first. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes. We went through the whole process and got a temporary CO, all sign-offs, everything, barring an approval from the board.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the box as it's built was intended to be the size that it is currently, but it was just going to be submerged.
Correct.
That's
the size that was prescribed for appropriate level of stormwater management.
This is very helpful in understanding what's happened here, because it wasn't clear that it was the grade that was the issue.
Right. We couldn't believe that either.
Ms. McCroskey.
So
Go ahead.
on that previous drawing, the red lines that's showing is where the dirt should come up on the box.
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe, Scott, maybe you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so there would be a sharp grade between the edge of the box and where the fence is. That's the grade that you're concerned about.
Yeah.
And our neighbors are concerned about.
Yes. We'd all be concerned about that. Yes, Ms. McCroskey.
Yeah, and this might be for the engineer, Mr. Anderson. So if one were to put that dirt there, will that cause a functionality problem of the stormwater boxes? Or would that, but or do they still work if you put the dirt around them?
I believe they would still work. I'm actually the builder, not the engineer, but I mean, if we graded it per the grading plan, everything should work. It's just, the inconvenience to the homeowners and the neighbors.
Yeah, very helpful. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, discussions among the board. Very, very helpful sorting this out. It's not a construction error per se. It's a difference in grading. So it really became a zoning issue because now the box is higher than it would have been, even though it's exactly the same size that it was built to. It's just the dirt didn't come up high enough.
Yeah, based on the elevations, it was showing it was greater now, so that's what's causing the placement issue.
Ms. McCroskey.
I'll just give my input, which is I'm always the grumpy one around here, I think, but I do think that this is one where there's the reasonable solution to this problem is to allow the setback use permit, because it doesn't, I don't think at this point it does anybody any good, and really including those neighbors, to make them put the dirt in there. So I don't like the after the fact ones. Sorry, you get our frustration as a result, but I think that's where we are on this one, and I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Ms. Freshman.
I agree. I think there has to be, as much as we don't like after the fact and as much as we don't like to set all kinds of precedent, it was built the way it was supposed to be built. I think when you see the drawings and the red lines, it just defies sensibility to put dirt there just to put dirt there, so that it makes the passage impassable and potentially creates a water hazard for the neighbor, French drain notwithstanding. So I just think we have to, think about what makes sense, and that it's quite unlikely that this would be replicated.
The only other question I had was, you sent out registered notices to your neighbors, but did you get any responses?
We did. This is Melody Gates, and I can just reply to that. We sent out the neighbor notices, and they actually spoke with Graham and Julia McBride, and that was one of the supplemental documents that we submitted that was submitted on Monday. That's a letter where actually the McBrides and the two neighbors are agreeing with the statement and the use permit, and they've all signed it via DocuSign.
Yeah, I think there was supplemental material that had two neighbors that had signed off on supporting the project. Yeah, it's kind of strange that this became a zoning issue, because it really is a grading issue, because the project was actually built according to the approved plans. It just wasn't graded to the approved plans, and we usually don't get involved in grading. I'm ready for a motion if anybody wants to move forward.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V1201824 UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
A second.
Motion made by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Clark. Any discussion? I will
Ms.
just
Mausch.
say that, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Kaplan. No, I go last.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to say that, for I know that our entire development community, tunes into the BZA every month, but I just wanted to, before the vote, say that, like, I hope that this does not become a continual retroactive approval, that that we're going to see this board have to deal with this issue over and over again, kind of like we are with the porches.
I agreed. And I agree with Ms. Freshman that, we do get concerned about after the fact approvals. And we also get concerned about after the approvals on new construction where, you had, there's every opportunity to do it correctly. And so that makes it doubly concerning when we see a proposal like this. Any other comments? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
No.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 4-1. You have your less grading project approved. Ms. Ryan, will you call the next item?
Yes, case number B-12019-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Rosewoods Construction LLC on behalf of Arthur Weiner and Jennifer Gilman, the owners to permit a left side setback of 10.9 feet to the screen porch, 9.8 feet to the porch eve, instead of 18.4 feet to the porch, 14.4 feet to the porch eve, as required, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 22.5 feet instead of 30 feet, as required, regarding a new screen porch to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R20 zoning district on the premises known as 2750 North Nelson Street in Riverwood. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I will note that it seems like we've received neighbor input from only two of the neighbors.
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure, and there's nothing has come later. All right. Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant with us? Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Hi, my name is Rudy Tapia. I'm representing Rosswoods Construction for the applicants. I just wanted to come and emphasize that the proposed construction does not significantly infringe on the setback requirements, and that we have received 2 neighbor notifications that have also shown that it does not propose any bother to surrounding neighbors. And there's also a very significant amount of space in the rear of this property that does not infringe on any of the neighbors, on the surrounding neighbors. And yeah, that's all I wanted.
All right. Any questions for the applicant?
So is this being built above, on top of part of the above grade patio that's
Yes,
already
there's
there?
already a patio, an existing patio.
Okay, and that patio goes very close to the
Yes,
sidewalk.
it goes even further beyond, yes.
Right, but part of it now is, and how high is that patio? Is it ground level, basically?
Yes,
Okay, and then it's gonna, so this porch is gonna go up from there.
right.
And go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I need to look.
The setbacks that you're requesting, the current patio is in the exact same place on the left side?
Yes.
Okay. And you have a 4-foot eve? Is that what I'm reading?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Are you able to hear us?
Somebody has joined. Are you part of this application?
It's the property owner? Yeah.
Don't know.
Can you hear us?
I hear somebody, but I don't know who you are.
1 second. I'm Jennifer Gilman, one of the homeowners, and I'm with Arthur Weiner. Sorry, we're just having a technical issue. 1 moment.
All right.
All right, can you hear me now?
I hear you, yes.
Okay, so I'm Arthur Weiner. I'm the existing homeowner along with my wife, Jennifer Gilman.
Could you state, I'm sorry, could you state your name?
Arthur Weiner, I'm the
Okay,
property
got
owner.
it. Okay.
So this porch is going to be built as Rudy, a representative there, mentioned, on top of the existing patio. It will not extend beyond the existing structure up closer to the property line. It's going to be in line with the existing structure. Our house just has an awkward shape to it because it was built in 1951. And so just the way it's angled makes it run up into the needing to require a setback request with you guys. But as Rudy mentioned, there is a large open area in the back. We had only 2 of my neighbors had submitted letters when I submitted my application. I have an additional letter. I knocked on everyone's door. No one had any objections, and they were aware of this meeting as well.
So we have a letter from your left-facing neighbor. And I think we have a letter from one of your rear neighbors. Is that correct?
I believe so. I think I have the right-facing neighbor, handed me a letter after I submitted the application as well.
You have a letter from them, but just has not been submitted.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
I'm happy to upload it after the meeting.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Matters with the board.
Ms. Mellis, may I ask a question of staff real quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to confirm that the comparables listed for setback, are those all R20s?
Sorry, what was the question again?
The comparables for setback in your report, are those generally, those would be all R20s, right?
Yes. Yeah, the
Yeah,
examples I
it
gave
says
are all
that. I just wanted
R20s.
I just wanted to double check that, because a lot of them seem suspiciously close to the R6 10 feet, so I just wanted to double check. Thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Ms. McCroskey?
So I see it says the current patio is above grade. Does that mean 8 inches or more above grade?
That's correct. So if any
Okay.
portion of it is 8 inches or above grade, it would be considered above grade patio.
Okay, thank you.
And that grade, would that have required relief, or was that built by right?
I don't know the history of when that patio was built, but it would need relief if
It would have
is.
needed
Yeah.
relief.
I thought that the applicant said that the current patio was at ground level, but I see stairs.
He did, and when I asked the question, but he said it was around 8 inches. But then I went back to the report because I had in my notes that the current patio is above grade, and the porch is proposed to be built on just
on top
of that current patio.
But we don't see any evidence of approval on that. So just like in that previous case, does staff have any insight into that?
I'm not on the history of that, but if they were to build on top of that, they wouldn't be increasing their lot coverage? Because that above grade patio would count towards their total lot coverage.
Could the applicant talk to the sort of provenance of the patio? I guess that would be the owners, maybe. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still there. All I can tell you, we purchased the house in April of 2021. The patio was already in existence.
Okay.
I believe for a long time before we purchased the house.
Okay.
I can't speak to that.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does staff have any pictures in their presentation on that?
So
The bottom right picture probably shows it the best, just to help the
where
board out.
it looks like there's some things that are covered, right? That's where the patio is.
I mean, it looks like it's at grade to me, but there's a lot of stuff
That
in the way.
sure looks like at grade, yeah. Though there's
Right.
some snow there, but
Right, so is that patio at grade or is that over 8 inches? Because to me, it makes a big difference.
Mr. Weiner, can you speak to that?
I mean, it is, I don't know about 8 inches. It's definitely slightly above grade because you can see that the house is on a slope, right? So.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So on the left there by the, if you look by the chimney,
Yeah.
you can see that it's raised on that corner.
Yeah, but on the
Might not
corner
be-
where we're proposing the patio, it's much less raised.
You're proposing it on the right side
Correct.
as
of
we're
the
looking at
photo.
that picture, right? I get it.
Yes. So it would just sort of almost be like a continuation off the room that you see there.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful too. Any other questions for the applicant? Any other questions for anybody?
Motion?
Ms. Freshman.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-12019-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Clark to grant the use permit with conditions. Is there any further discussion by the board? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
No.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to approve adopted 4-1. Thank you, everyone. The matter is concluded. You have your porch, sunroom.
Good night. Statement.
Would you like to say something? Yeah, Ms. McCroskey.
Yeah, I just want to make the following disclosure before the next item. With regard to item V 1202024 UP1, I wish to disclose that I'm an acquaintance friend of the owners of the property located at 6038 28th Street North, which is the subject of that item. This relationship does not require a disclosure, nor does it affect my ability to participate in the BZA's consideration of this matter. I do not have a personal interest in this item, as personal interest is defined in the Virginia Code, and I am able to participate in this matter fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. I just want to get the disclosure on the record.
Thank you, Ms. McCroskey. Ms. Ryan, will you call this item?
Yes, case V-12020-24-1. Use permit request by Vladimir Kudlar on behalf of David and Julie Monticello, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 11 feet to the wall and porch, 9 feet to the chimney, instead of 11.3 feet to the wall and porch, 9.8 feet to the chimney, as required, in a total aggregate side yard width of 20.7 feet instead of 21 feet as required, regarding a new second floor addition with a chimney expansion, a new 2-story rear addition on an existing 1-family detached dwelling in the R8 zoning district on the premises known as 6038 28th Street North in Williamsburg. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting these permit requests with conditions. And we did receive additional supplemental material, which included 2 comment forms, 1 in support, and then 1 that did not object to the request.
Ms. Malice has stepped out for a minute. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Does the applicant want to make a presentation?
Hi, thank you. My name is Julie Monticello. I'm the owner of the property. I've actually lived on this street. We actually lived on North Ohio. I have 6 kids. We've lived here for 22 years. We lived in a house across the way. We bought this property originally from Benjamin Shore, who was a rambler. And because we have 6 kids, we needed more space. So we did the first edition, not considering like where my husband and I would go, because at that point, just with all our kids, it really wasn't our priority that we just need some bedrooms. So this new addition is partially due to my elderly handicapped mom also comes to live with us and a semi-permanent basis. So we would love to have a master bedroom finally. And my neighbors have always commented, and in Ben Shore, who raised his family in our house as a rambler, they love the way we've made our house. And that means something to me because the street means something to me. Because like I said, I have a lot invested in this community at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. We'll let you know if we have any questions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
so
On the left side for the proposed addition,
yeah,
it is not going to, it's not going to go out, or is it going to go out any further than the part in front of it?
I have to refer to my architect on that, but I did mention to him that when we built this house, our original architect, believe it or not, although I do have lots of children, I wanted to keep a look of, I wanted it to not look like a block. I wanted to have some dimension, which is why we kind of made it look, I try to mimic like a 4-square architecturally. And then, so we had that one set drop back, and I really didn't want it to look flat. I didn't want to ruin the look of the 4-square because I think that's what makes the house look pretty. So we suggested coming out a little bit just so it still has some dimension.
I can help answer that too. So there's an existing building wall that's 11 feet currently sitting there, and they're going to build the rear addition in line with that existing first floor addition.
Mhm.
Ms. Mellis,
Mr. Kaplan.
I would be prepared to make a motion if we're ready.
Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-12020-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the
Second.
staff report.
Seconded by Ms. Freshman. Motion made by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Freshman to grant the use permit request with conditions. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to adopt.
Thank you.
Approved 5-0. That was that was kind of fast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy your new addition.
We will. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Ryan, will you call the next item?
Yes, case number V-12021-24-APP1, an appeal request at 1013 17th Street South in Arlington Ridge. And we did receive 2 BZA comment forms as supplemental material.
Okay.
I just wanted to, sorry, I didn't want to get too far along. I just wanted to let the board know, I believe the current owner of this property is on the call.
Okay, where are, what?
I'm gonna speak to what their actual plans are.
All right, what case are we on now?
The one that was just called.
Just called?
Yeah.
Okay, and you want to speak to it before you sit down?
My understanding is that, no, I just didn't want to get too far along. Meg didn't realize this, but I believe the current property owner, so is on the call. I just want to make sure that they're recognized.
Okay.
because they might want to share what their actual plans are.
Okay,
That's all.
okay, and they're going to be
Mi-
part of.
Ms. Malice?
We're not presenting, right? Because we don't have an application, but I just didn't want that to be lost.
Okay,
Got it.
all right.
Ms. Malice?
Mr. Kaplan,
Ms. Malice, I believe at our December hearing, I don't have all the paperwork in front of me, but I guess.
Rick, can you try to get closer to your microphone? Sorry.
My other one.
You're better if you lean to your right. We can hear you better.
I just put in my other headset, so is that better?
Not much.
I don't know what changed. Is that better?
oh.
Yes.
Okay, I took out my headset. I don't know what, maybe the batteries are dying. At our December hearing, we scheduled this appeal for a dismissal hearing because it was filed in September and the appellant had not paid the fee as invoiced shortly after September 20th to the appellant. And so I think we wanted to hear from the appellant on what their plan for this appeal was before we decided how to move forward with this dismissal. I think that's kind of where we're at.
All right.
I thought if I could just add one point of clarity, I think what the zoning administrator was trying to add is staff learned this afternoon, there's some very crucial information that I think might streamline the whole process that about the property that we've only just learned that might be of use to the board to know before we even hear from the appellant tonight. The property owner is on the line to provide some information, I think, about their.
I would like to check in with the appellant and we will do that. But I think we have an appellant here so there's no staff report on this item, correct? So do you have a presentation on this item or you're just here?
There's no appeal application.
Okay, so yeah, correct. Okay, so it's the dismissal hearing. You're here for the next appeal.
Yeah.
You're here for this item.
Yes.
All right.
My name is Joanne Johnson and I live at 1017 17th Street South next to 1013 17th Street. I did have 6 copies of something to share with you all, which is a statement.
So are you're the
I filed an appeal of the EHO permit at 1013 17th Street South. But I believe what the county is going to allude to was the property has since been sold and the new owner is on the phone. And I don't want to preemptively speak for her or him if they're both on, but they were not planning to pursue anything involving the EHO.
So what is your position at this point in time?
So here is my thoughts. I filed the appeal and as you know, on May 29th, the EHO permit was filed. It was submitted by Ryan Schwartz. The owner was RGS 17th LLC. Then on August 21st, 2024, the county approved the permit. I then filed an appeal of that EHO permit. A couple of days later, I received the information from the county regarding the fee, which was approximately $1,200. Then a few days later, I then followed up with an email asking what is the deadline to pay this very high fee. And I was told in an email, which is attached to the materials I provided, that there was not a deadline to pay the fee. Then a few days later, the Circuit Court in Norgren v. Arlington County Board held on September 27th that the 2023 EHO amendments to the county zoning ordinance were void ab initio. So any of the issued EHO permits, including this one, became void. So now I have an appeal pending on a permit that no longer exists. So I reached out to the county about this matter, and I spoke to somebody on the phone. And what are they going to do? Well, at this time, they didn't know whether or not they were going to appeal. Everything was in flux, and it was suggested just hold. And there was no statutory deadline for paying the fee. Then on October 1st, the county sent a letter to the permit holders indicating that the circuit judge had overturned the EHO ordinance passed by the county board, and that the judge ruled that the EHO amendments were void, as if they never existed, and enjoined the county from issuing further permits or continuing to approve EHOs. In this document, as a result, the county must void all EHO permits and halt all associated review processes. So all of this is feeding into what is happening with my appeal. It's void. There's nothing it's based on. So then on October 2nd, the county actually voided the permit. And today, as of today, if you look on the county website, the EHO permit continues to be void. Then on November 19th, the county board voted to appeal the circuit court ruling to the Virginia Court of Appeals and subsequently filed an appeal in appeal briefs. So again, I'm hanging out there with my appeal application on an EHO permit that is void. And I have this pending fee, but there's nothing ripe for an appeal hearing of the EHO permit on the merits because there is no EHO permit anymore. So it's a bit of a conundrum. In the meantime, the applicant for the EHO permit sold the property at 1013 17th Street. At the time of sale, there was no, as there is not now, there is no valid EHO permit to be tied to the property, given the circuit court's decision invalidating the ordinance upon which the permit was based. There's no EHO permit to transfer with the property. Therefore, if the Court of Appeals overturns the circuit court, any current owner or successive owner of 1013 17th Street should have to apply for a new EHO permit and not be permitted to rely on the previous issued permit. In addition, as a matter of prudence, any new owner of 1013 17th Street should be required to file a new AHO permit given the passage of time during the pending appeal, changed circumstance, and reliance on outdated plans that may also have, frankly, copyright restrictions. The original permit holder who paid and employed the architects and engineers of the EHO permit that was previously approved by the county is no longer a party to the EHO permit matter. In addition, the new owners who are on the line had talked to me and indicated they can speak about this, that they did not intend to pursue the EHO permit if in fact it did transfer with the land. But I did look at the land records. I saw nothing, which seems logical because there is no EHO permit because it was void. As I indicated, shortly after filing my appeal, the circuit court issued its decision finding the ordinance invalid upon which the EHO permit is based as void. Given that the permit upon which my appeal is based is void, as I said, there's nothing to appeal or review. However, another conundrum is that if the Court of Appeals overturns the lower court, the issued EHO permits may become valid and ripe for a BZA hearing on the merits. Thus, it is imperative that the appeal of the EHO permit at 1013 17th Street South, if it in fact gets reinstated because the Court of Appeals overturns the lower court, it needs to be held in abeyance until and if the Court of Appeals overturns the circuit court. The fee should be paid at that time if and when the Court of Appeals makes their decision and if they overturn it. As I noted, I was told that there was no deadline to file the fee, and that seems logical because that is when there would actually be a valid permit upon which this appeal application would be based. In addition, there were two other cases in a different posture but similar at the same time, in which at the time of the circuit court decision, there was a pending merits hearing on two other EHOs. And in those decisions, they ended up, the BZA ended up proceeding with the hearing, even though the permits were void, because of this very concern that I flagged, which is what happens if the Virginia Court of Appeals overturns the lower court and the EHO becomes invalid. They need to preserve, they need to preserve our rights to be able to have that merits hearing. As I noted already, though, the sale of the property, while the EHO permit was void, should nullify the EHO permit for 1013 17th Street should the Court of Appeals overturn the lower court. Any new owner should be required to reapply for the EHO permit, I think, for 1013 17th Street. And the appeal deadline of the new HO would set upon the filing of that new EHO permit. And lastly, as I stated earlier, with the EHO original applicant no longer party to the permit, if we just took it to its practical reality and the Virginia Court of Appeals overturned the lower court and my appeal application was valid and you all schedule a merits hearing on the appeal and the house has been sold and the owner is not planning on pursuing the EHO, but the EHO could be tied to the land. So any successive owner, if the current owner, by changed circumstances unbeknownst to them now, sold the property, we're left with, we better preserve our right to have that merits hearing. So we come before you and have our merits hearing with no real party because the current owners are not interested in pursuing, and there's no expiration date on the EHO permit. So all these reasons are why I don't support my basis for postponing the fee if in fact you find that there is an EHO permit that could potentially be heard by this board in the event the Virginia Court of Appeals overturns the lower court's decision.
Thank you. You've raised a number of issues that are not in our purview in terms of what if this happens and what if that happens. But at this point, I believe it's our position that you have an incomplete appeal application because you have not paid the fee. The other cases where the appellant wished to preserve their rights had complete applications with the appeal fee paid, and we deferred those subject to the court's decision going forward. So that's what we've done in the past. And so you need to think about how that fits in with what your desires are.
Could I make a comment? I understand what you're saying, although mine is distinguishable because those two, they filed their appeal. There is a valid permit. They paid their fee. The Board of Zoning Appeals schedules a merits hearing, And during that time, the permit became void. And on what is their appeal to be based? In fact, the county had wanted to dismiss it because the permit was void. But the parties came forward and said, no, don't dismiss it because we don't want to lose our appeal right.
Right.
And in my case, there wasn't as I was told by the county, there wasn't a deadline to file the fee. A few days later, the court issues the decision. There's no EHO permit that's valid anymore. So what is my appeal based on that I would have before the Board of Zoning Appeals? I'm waiting for, in the event that it was to materialize with a Court of Appeals decision that would overturn it. It seems then it would be ripe for an appeal, for the appeal and for the filing of the fee, which doesn't have a deadline per the county. I asked.
I will just.
And I relied on that.
I will give you my view, and our colleagues will weigh in as well, and then we'll kind of discuss the matter. But I believe you had an opportunity to actually have a merits hearing, but we didn't schedule you because you had not paid the fee.
No, I'm sorry, that did not come up. I was told everything was in flux and I hadn't heard back.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because because we didn't know that they were even going to appeal the EHO permit until the end of November. That's when the county voted. So at that point, there was literally nothing to appeal. And then they ultimately filed the appeal at the end of December.
Okay. So your request is that you would like to maintain your ability to appeal, but not pay the fee.
I would, of course, pay the fee when there is something to appeal, but the EHO permit is non-existent. It was void in that tiny window between when I filed the appeal. So there's nothing to have a merits hearing on, just like you couldn't have a merits hearing on those two other cases.
Well, we didn't have a merits hearing. Yeah, we just had a deferral hearing on those. We did not hear those on the merits, I don't believe.
I guess when I say merits, I mean literally on the merits of the application, meaning the merits of the permit itself. That was not what that hearing was. It was a hearing to discuss deferring. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll let my colleagues weigh in here on their thoughts.
Ms. Mellis?
Mr. Kaplan.
I have a question for staff, but let me just first say that one of the things that comes along with an appeal is an automatic stay of the action being appealed. And staff's position, and staff can correct me if I'm getting this wrong in any way, is that an appeal is not complete until the fee is paid. So the automatic stay of the action is not perfected or does not take effect until that appeal is complete and the application fee been paid. So hypothetically, if the appeals court sides with the county and resurrects these EHO permits, then that can happen very quickly, and this appellant might not even be aware that that's going forward because they don't have a perfected appeal. And then this appellant would want to come before the BZA trying to figure out what to do, right? And I think that that's kind of one of the concerns, at least I don't want to speak for the entire BZA, but that's my concern as a BZA member. My question for staff is, and I don't know if you have an answer to this, but an EHO permit, does that run with the land or does that run with the applicant? So this property sold, can the new property owner, if this is resurrected by a court, could the new property owner move forward with that, or would that have to get a new EHO permit?
I'll take that one, and I think we're in way too many hypotheticals. It's a hypothetical land there, and I don't think we can give an answer to that.
Oh,
right, and so
question, whether it runs with the land or the owner?
It's way too many hypotheticals involved with that for us to give an answer in this forum right now.
And so if the county doesn't have a position on whether the EHO runs with the land or the the permit holder, that's all the more reason that, you know, I would think that this appellant would want to perfect their appeal rights if this is their concern. But, you know, perhaps they need to engage, you know, counsel on their own for advice on that. I would be uncomfortable just letting this sit out here for, you know, a day or the next, you know, 3 years, however this long this takes, especially, you know, with my understanding of how that works and you know, if these type actions are resurrected, this appellant would not have, you know, some of the protections that you know the other two have by having a perfected appeal. So I would not be in favor of letting this sit out here for the next
I'm sorry, I missed
30
what
years.
the last part of what you said was.
I said I would not be in favor of just letting an appeal, you know,
Just
hang
sit.
out in the ether for the next several years possibly. And that's not even, you know, not even addressing some of the statutory language in, you know, the BZA appeal statutes.
Colleagues, do you wish to hear from the new owner? Do you feel that that would be relevant at this point?
I would like to hear.
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
I can't hear.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear either of you.
We want to hear from the new owner. Are you available?
That's me. I'm
And
here.
where are you? Are you MB?
Yes, Melanie Becker. So
Thank
my husband's gone to sleep. Yeah, we're the new owners. We just acquired the property a little over a month ago and moved in. We're not planning to pursue whatever permit the previous owner had for the property. We've moved in and we're living in it as a single family home.
Do you feel that you are entitled to build an EHO under the permit that was issued for your property?
I don't know anything about this permit.
Okay.
All I know is we got something in the mail and there's a sign in our yard.
Notifying you of the hearing?
Yes. We were just moving in and all of a sudden there's a little sign in our yard.
All right, you're in the middle of something now.
We just moved in. We've got 2 small kids and 2 full-time jobs as federal employees. Like whatever is happening with this is not our interest to pursue this permit.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your appearing. That's Ms. McCroskey.
I tend to think this got more complex when we got in here tonight, but I tend to think that if we're going to hold an appeal, the fee and continue to manage it and work it, the fee should be paid. I think the appellant obviously has questions that they need to decide about whether they want to pay the fee and have this continue on in the event you need to just decide whether you want to pay the fee, or in the event the ordinance is reinstated, whether you would you want to have that last, because I think that the BZA would tend to say, we're not going to have this hang around forever without payment of the fee. The staff is managing it and tracking it. So I would suggest that we would either move, I could make a motion to dismiss. We could also, if you want a little bit more time, given all these circumstances, to make a decision, I would be willing to support, I don't know if anybody else would, but I'd be willing to support a motion to defer this for a month or so to give you more time to think. But I don't think we should have this hanging around much longer without getting it taken care of.
Mr. Kaplan, I see you nodding your head. Would you be in general agreement with that?
Yeah, I would be in general agreement with that. I mean, I think, without, since staff has no position on whether this permit runs with the land or runs with the former permit holder, if for whatever reason this property owner were to sell the property to another property owner who then could resurrect it. So if this, that's a decision that I think that this appellant has to make, what kind of finality she is concerned about. And perhaps she needs some time to think about that a little bit more. But I think that there tends to be some agreement that we can't just let this hang around for the reasons I think I have spoken to already.
Any other comments on this? I think that is Ms. McCroskey.
I guess I would just raise one other issue, maybe for everybody's knowledge. How long is the EHO permit valid if it doesn't, they don't proceed on it? Do you know, Arloa? Under the zoning ordinance?
It doesn't expire.
Okay. All right.
I think our direction is that in order to maintain the viability of your appeal, a fee should be paid, but we're willing to give you a 2-month deferral on this matter to consider your options. We'd have you come back in March and you can tell us where you are then, and we'll make a decision then.
I appreciate that, and I will do that. Thank you very much for your time and hearing my positions. As you know, a $1,200 fee is quite excessive, and it just stands to reason that it's just, my logic was that we could hold it until that appeal was ripe instead of, because if it turns out, could I ask this, if it turns out that the Court of Appeals doesn't overturn the lower court, I wouldn't get my appeal fee back.
That's not in our jurisdiction at all.
I'd be out of the $1,200. Yeah.
And I think, and my colleagues may agree, we would have you come back for another dismissal hearing. If at that time you've chosen to pay the appeal, we would schedule you for an actual hearing to defer the matter.
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan, does that sound right?
I think that right. I think that's right. We would have the hearing and then decide whether the circumstances are similar to the other two that we kind of held in abeyance for the appellate court.
So we would have you come for a dismissal hearing. If you've paid the fee, then we would schedule you for a regular hearing to act on a deferral as we did on the others.
May I ask one last question, or?
And refunds are within the purview of staff, so you could address with them offline what those requirements would be to get a refund. That's not something this board can address.
Right.
And okay, my last question is just I guess I didn't understand, or who would I ask? Like the EHO permit tying to the land, how is that a hypothetical? Because it's a concrete situation. I don't understand how it's a hypothetical. It's a factual question.
Yeah, that's a factual question that the BZA can't address. So you're going to have to figure out how you get that answer off that.
I mean, I guess I didn't understand why the county couldn't answer it.
I understand.
Okay. Thank you, though, all of you. Anything else?
I think we're going to make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Anybody want to make a motion? I'm happy to start at Mr. Kaplan. Mr. Kaplan.
I move to defer the matter of V-12021-24-APPE-1 for a dismissal hearing to our March BZA agenda.
All right. Second?
Second.
Ms. Freshman. Mr. Kaplan, the reference number you used was the appeal number?
Yes, V, just for clarity, V-12021-24-APP-1.
Okay, that's what number. All right. Motion made by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Freshman to defer the dismissal hearing to our March BZA hearing. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Mrs. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So we'll see you back in March after you've
Thank
been able
you.
to consider your situation.
Thank you. And
All right.
there were other neighbors, just to acknowledge them, who are on the call.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Ryan, will you call the next? Does anybody need a break? It's 9:30. I know you guys are ready to go. Are we all good?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Stretch your legs. Mr. Kaplan, you can take a break too.
Thank you, Ms. Mellis.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're all back, ready to go. Ms. Ryan, will you call the next case?
Yes, case number V-12022-24-APP-1, appeal by Alan Calabari of what he claims is a zoning determination letter stating that the parking lot was not in violation of the Arlington County zoning ordinance, section 14.3.3.e, for a property located in the RA 818 zoning district on the premises known as 2114 North 19th Street North, RPC number 16-026-007 in Colonial Village. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution affirming that the zoning administrator has not made a decision, nor an administrative officer made any order, requirement, decision, or determination in the administration or enforcement of the AXO, and stating that the BZA does not have any authority to consider this matter pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-2311. Section A, and alternatively, that the relief requested by the appellant has been provided and that the appeal is now moot.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. This is an appeals hearing, so each party gets 20 minutes to present their case, and the county goes first.
Thank you. For the record, Arlova Baum, zoning administrator, myself, and Ann Golsky from the county attorney's office are going to kind of go back and forth on the slides. So we're going to start with Ann. So if you could advance.
I'll go first. I'm Ann Golsky with the County Attorney's Office.
Next.
And our,
Next, yeah, there we go.
are we ready? Sorry, thanks, Arlova. Our position is that this board doesn't have jurisdiction to hear this matter. And that is because pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2311A, this is not the staff email that is supposedly a decision of zoning determination letter is not what it is purported to be. It is neither a decision of the zoning administrator, nor is it an order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any other administrative officer in the enforcement of the zoning ordinance. And that is what this board has jurisdiction to hear. The staff email, the October email that is at issue and being appealed or trying to be appealed in this matter doesn't meet the requirements of the state jurisdictional statute. As we've quoted in the staff report, this board derives its jurisdiction, its power from Virginia Code Section 15.2-2309, paragraph 1, and that is to hear decisions. Well, let me get the direct quote. It's 2309. Oh, sorry. I'm just kind of talking out of order a little bit. I do that. Sorry. But it would be, it's not an order. You only have the authority to hear appeals from orders, requirements, decisions, or determinations made by administrative officers. This email is not any one of those. And Arlova is going to tell you why that is.
Next slide. So decisions and determinations of the zoning administrator or an administrative officer need to have a few things. So one is an explicit request. There needs to be an ask to do something, to permit construction of something, and ask about how something's classified, accompanied by some pertinent information, otherwise known as facts, that we have to review, analyze, consider, and often also accompanied by a fee of some kind. So it might be a permit fee or a fee for a zoning determination. The examples provided are just that, examples. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are the types of activities that would result in a zoning decision or a zoning determination. So an application for a building permit, notices of violation, if you ask for a use interpretation, how something is classified, or another example might be a vested rights analysis. Next slide. The staff email, which is the subject of the appeal, was an email response provided when the appellant inquired about the status of a current enforcement case. And so it had an email signature that very clearly stated that this response is not a zoning determination subject to appeal. And further, the appellant responded to the email with a clarifying question to confirm whether or not it was a determination, or was it to clarify whether or not it was in fact a determination. In addition, the staff email was not accompanied by any facts to consider. There was no explicit ask for a question or something to be analyzed, nor was a fee paid. The email was not definitive. In fact, the zoning staff member used phrases like "I believe," and referred the appellant to seek additional information and additional detail about the case from another staff person who was more qualified to speak to the issue. And lastly, the staff email was not written by me, the zoning administrator. Next slide. Passing it back to Ann.
So I think the crux of the jurisdictional issue is that, well, first I would say we recognize the appellant is clearly very frustrated that with the parking situation, what he views as a violation of the ACZO 14.3.3 E at the VFW. We recognize that, but just because he's frustrated, simply calling this a determination or a decision doesn't make it a determination that meets the criteria of 2311A. And we have to remember that it is the appellant's burden. The burden is on the appellant to demonstrate that he is appealing an order, requirement, decision, or determination of an administrative officer. The appellant has to show that this board has jurisdiction to hear this appeal. And although he's shown that he's frustrated with the parking and he's trying to do something, he hasn't found the right forum and the right avenue to express that. So we would ask that this board recognize that it does not have jurisdiction to hear this matter. And I think if this board goes as far as recognizing an email string like this, which is really just an everyday business email, this board is going to open itself to a very large appellate docket. Because this is a regular everyday business email. This is not a request for a determination, and it does not provide a set of facts that satisfy something that can be appealed to this body. So we would ask that this board would move that it does not have the jurisdiction to hear this matter and vote on the jurisdiction issue first before we move to the second issue, which we would call a more our alternative issue, or sort of the substantive issue. I don't know if the board would hear the
Is that
jurisdictional issue first, and then we discuss the second issue after that vote.
Does that complete your presentation?
On the jurisdictional issue, we can talk about the second one if you'd rather
I think you
do that
continue.
now or after the vote,
You can
whichever you'd
continue.
prefer.
Continue.
So you need to skip a couple of slides. Keep going, keep going. So this is the last one. If the BZA finds that a zoning decision or determination was made, we believe the relief requested has already been provided and that the appeal is moot. So the appellant has sought enforcement of the zoning regulations. The property is governed by a county board issued use permit, which approved the surface parking lot with conditions. The zoning office has issued a notice of violation for the parking lot, citing concerns about compliance with the county board use permit. Thus, the relief requested has already been achieved and the issue is moot. So there's no action that this board can take because we've already taken the action. And further, the determination of the administrative officer is presumed to be correct. So that if we get there, our position is that if you want to go to the next slide, then we would recommend adoption of the alternative resolution stating that the relief requested by the applicant has been provided and the appeal is moot. That is all we have.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Colleagues, would you like to ask a few questions of staff before we hear from the applicant? Or do you want to? Okay, I would suggest that we ask maybe clarifying questions, and if we get into argument, then we'll do that after we've heard the appellant.
So my only question was when the appellant sent the email that said, is this a determination? Was there a response to that email?
No.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Sure.
Mr. Kaplan?
Yes, Ms. Malice, I just have a quick, I hope, clarifying question. Is it staff's position that the subject of the email would not be the proper subject of a zoning determination letter, or is this more procedural, or both?
I think clarify the question. I'm getting
if the appellant wanted a zoning determination letter, is there a more appropriate way to do that, or is this not the proper subject of a zoning determination letter that can be requested?
I got it, I think. There is a there's a website, there's a process, there's an application, there's instructions, there's a place for you to ask, this is the question I want answered. So yes, there is a formal process to seek a zoning determination that would be appropriate.
In the facts of this case?
Yes, in any situation, that's yes.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. In the presentation, you listed some rules about what the BZA can do. I think it was one of the early ones. I just wondered where those rules were from. If you go back,
I'm going to let Ann answer, but I believe we were citing the Code of Virginia.
Keep going back to before we get to,
I think it's before this.
This, yeah. It was after this. Can you go forward a little bit? Oops.
The other way.
The other way. Okay. Go back. Yep. There we go. Oh. One forward. Okay, where it says the decisions require, where, these requirements, where did they come from?
The I can't see that slide very well, but the BZA's powers are set forth
Can you
in,
see the slide where it lists an explicit request, a set of facts, and in some cases a fee?
oh, those are zoning decisions. So those,
Are they in the code, or is this procedural practice?
some of that, well, those are, a lot of those are listed on our website. And some of those are, Arlova, you can probably speak to what a
I think
lot of
he's
those are.
asking, is there a code section that says it must, all of these things must appear? And I think that's just practically,
Or is this
there has to be
practice?
something, a question asked to be considered. And what is it that you want clarity on and what is pertinent to
This
that?
is not code, it's just,
No.
it's just your practice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you use the word zoning administrator or an administrative officer. Who would be an administrative officer?
Good question. For the purposes of this argument, we're assuming without deciding that this email could be considered, the author of this email could be considered an administrative officer. It is very hard to find an appropriate definition for an administrative officer. It's hard to define it legally. So we have assumed without deciding. So I don't believe that's an issue in this case. The statute is divided by, if you read it carefully, there's two parts to it. It says a decision of the zoning administrator. So that's clear who that is. And then there's an or, and then it says, order decision of any other administrative officer. And there's no great legal definition, but it doesn't matter because we're assuming without deciding. We're going to say for the purposes of this case only, let's just say that the author of the email is an administrative officer.
So you could
Just for the purposes of this case,
that
we're saying
author
it doesn't matter.
is an administrative. Okay.
Because for all these other reasons, we're not agreeing that she is, but for all the other reasons, this is not a decision or a determination. So we don't have to get to that issue.
And in our system, is it only the zoning administrator that writes letters of determination?
So again, very technical because I
The
think.
answer is no.
Yeah, well, it depends on how it's defined. So I think there's lots of different definitions of letters of determination. I think, yes, only the zoning administrator writes letters of determination. I think it's possible there are other
Decisions, because it says
decisions
or
that are
determination.
made. Would be something else. It's very hard to find one that's not an order or it's very hard to find things that aren't, it's kind of an other category, really. So it's very hard to define.
Okay.
But that's why it needs these, it needs a request and it needs a set of facts. And usually there's a violation, a notice of violation, or an application. And that's where you get your, the request and the set of facts. So it's when you don't have a notice of violation and when you don't have an application for like a permit or, whatever, that's when you get into the hard.
I don't want to get into, I think we're getting into the
Okay.
argument now. So we can continue these discussions in terms of after we've heard from the appellant. Is the appellant with us? Good evening.
Good evening. I have a supplemental 6 copies.
Okay, is this material not in the staff report?
I'm sorry.
Is this new material or is this material that's in the
It's
staff report?
substantially the same as far as my appeal is concerned, but I have addressed, the staff report, which is not in my, original filing.
Okay. You understand that we're going to have to read this on the fly while you're
Absolutely.
speaking.
Absolutely. But I'll be glad to read it, while you're actually
Or if you
reading
want
it
to
too. Yeah.
include it as you make your,
I've tried to be as brief as I can, I don't like verbosity, so if you just allow me to go ahead and read.
okay,
All right.
please proceed.
I already said good evening, so, Madam Chair and the board members, my name is Alan Calaberry. I live at 2122 19th Street North in Arlington, next to a parking lot that belongs to a commercial, establishment, although that's questionable. And it's called the Lion Post Home Inc. / Veterans of Foreign Wars. VFW was established in 1934 as a non-conforming nonprofit entity at 2114 19th Street. In 1993, VFW purchased an adjacent property at 2118 19th Street and applied for a use permit to convert the property into a parking lot and to operate as a fraternity. The use permit was granted by the county board subject to conditions and restrictions and a review in 1 year. For the record, VFW has never functioned as a fraternity, and that conformity has been void since 1995, according to section 15.4.5. The parking lot was constructed without a construction permit and in violation of the applicable zoning codes. There are no records of any approved plans for the parking lot or review of it in 1 year. There are no provisions in the use permit that would have relieved VFW of any permitting requirement. Exhibit C2, which is part of this package that I just gave you, shows a proposed layout for the parking lot with an incorrect 5-foot buffer between it and my property. This plan was never implemented. Exhibit C3 shows the existing layout of the parking lot in violation of 14.3.3.8, which is the 10-foot buffer requirement according to the zoning ordinance. On 3/20/2000, VFW building was illegally altered by an addition supported by a fictitious plat that showed 2,000 square feet more land than actual. It should be noted that the county records have been changed to align with this phony plat. Since then, the VFW building has been in violation of many zoning codes and it is totally illegal. I'll be happy to elaborate on these if you wish, but my focus is only on the parking lot. After my complaint on August 2023, zoning asked VFW to conduct a survey of its building and parking lot. That effort was completed before April 23, 2024, and email evidence shows collaboration between zoning and VFW exploring options to avoid compliance with 14.3.3.e or even the 5-foot buffer, framing the violation as a landscape issue. And you see exhibit, F1, 2, and 3 is the email traffic between zoning and, the VFW people. Again, for the record, zoning has refused to provide a copy of the survey under a FOIA request. The survey will probably show that the violations are more severe than thought. So the conclusion of my appeal is that I respectfully request that you reverse the zoning determination and order enforcement of the code 1433E, which is the 10-foot buffer, at 2118 19th Street North, Arlington, Virginia. That is my appeal. Now, this is a section that deals with the staff report, and that's only 3 pages. Zoning's entire case is based on the assertion that the email of October 15, 24 is not an official decision or determination, and has proposed 2 presumptuous options for BZA to pick from. 1, BZA has no jurisdiction to rule on this case, and 2, the appeal is moot because the relief is already provided. The email dated October 15 is signed by Ms. O'Connor, an official of the zoning division. She is a zoning inspection supervisor, and CC'd to the county attorney and the zoning administrator's office, Ms. Pamela Bannon. And that's, new Exhibit A. It is absurd to claim it has no validity. Ms. O'Connor is an administrative officer, 1 level below the deputy administrator. The notices that are issued by the zoning for various reasons are issued and signed by even lower grade staff. If they are not official, how can they be enforced? On page 4 of the staff report, the report states that the staff email expressly states that it is not an official order, requirement, decision, or determination. I raised this issue in my meeting with Mr. Blake Bowen, and he said that the disclaimer is a boilerplate language they put on every email. On top of page 5, the staff is asking why appellant asked Ms. O'Connor if that email serves as a decision/determination. I had also sent that question to the county attorney as well as the administrator's office. No one responded, and I assumed that it was a determination. Further, if that assumption was incorrect, why did zoning sit on it for almost 3 months, from October 15 to January 10th of this year? The jurisdiction issue is very intriguing. There are 2 venues to resolve zoning issues, BZA and the Circuit Court. Zoning requires everybody to go to BZA before going to court. So here we are. On page 2 of the staff report, zoning states that this zoning administrator believes this issue must be heard and resolved by the BZA prior to hearing and resolving the substance of this appeal. Ironically, this is precisely what I did. There is such a process in place, and I followed that. I met with BZA coordinator, discussed my issues, submitted my appeal package. It went through the screening process. The fee was assessed and paid and was accepted as complete. In addition, on January 10, 2025, I had a pre-hearing phone conference with the zoning staff and the county attorney's representative. It sounded as if the intent of the call was to encourage me to drop the appeal instead of having a constructive dialogue on the issues. The lack of jurisdiction argument, if the lack of jurisdiction argument is not convincing, zoning wants you to find this case moot as they believe they have already provided the relief sought. This is patently false and misleading. What relief? On page 2 of report, staff discusses the genesis of my complaint. Zoning's heroic effort to close the illegal restaurant next door, and they want to get credit for it. They call this the relief that they have provided. They forget to mention that it was the zoning that had issued an illegal occupancy permit in the first place for a catering/restaurant operation smack in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Zoning continues to misrepresent the parking lot violation as a landscaping issue. Nowhere in my complaint of 23, one can see the word landscape. The issue has always been the missing 10-foot buffer. Zoning is misleading you by misrepresenting the facts. After almost 18 months, for the first time, they have acknowledged in the staff report that the parking lot is in violation, but astonishingly, still trying to wiggle their way out of enforcing 1433E. On January 7th of this year, I got 3 weird emails that I did not understand. After several phone calls and emails, I learned that those emails were sent to me by mistake. It was a computer glitch. And they were placeholders for records that zoning planned to generate related to my appeal. 2 days later, those placeholder cells were populated with data about inspection, violation, notices, compliance, assigned staff, etc. Some of those records now appear as attachment to the staff report. At the bottom of page 2, the staff report states that on August 7, 2024, zoning initiated an enforcement case, ZENF 2400165, to deal with the landscape violation and closed my complaint of August 23, 2023, due to its resolution. This is false. First, my case has not been resolved. That's why I'm here. Second, there is no record of enforcement case ZENF 2400165 being opened on August 7 of 24. Third, I was not notified of these actions even under a FOIA request until 11/11/24, when I filed the appeal. The case was dead as a doornail. Just look at the dates on all the documents provided as attachment 6 to the staff report. Everything is after, I filed my appeal. On page 3, the staff report claims that in the course of investigating the landscape violation, enforcement staff concluded that the parking lot is in violation of section 1544. Still, they're not dealing with the actual violation. This is also a violation, but is somewhat removed from, my claim. Accordingly, a new zoning enforcement case, ZENF 25-00004, was opened on 1/7/25, and it was combined with the ZENF 24-00165. It is worth noting that all of these activities happened after I filed the appeal. It took zoning from April 2024 to January 7, 2025 to realize that trees and shrubs don't grow on asphalt pavement and the parking lot is in violation. This is not a complicated case. Just look at the Exhibit C3. If you don't see a 10-foot buffer between the parking lot and my property, you should require the VWF to put it in. My neighbor on the west side had to do this. They had done the same violation, no 10-foot buffer. I called in 3 days, zoning took care of it, and they made the owners, dig up the asphalt and put, grass in there. So why is it, taking 18 months for us to get here, and there is still no solution in sight? They are trying to wiggle their way out of this, and they're calling it whatever they want, and they come up with different, explanations, if you will. I just heard, they're saying the appellant is frustrated, with the parking lot. No, I'm not frustrated I'm frustrated with the zoning. Everybody comes here, they're asking for some deviation from an existing, rules and regulation. All I'm asking is enforce the, pardon the language, damn law. That's all I'm asking. They have already acknowledged half of the, the violation. They say, okay, 5 foot, yeah. No, I mean, they're in violation the whole 10 feet. I didn't push for the rest of the things. That whole operation is illegal. But I'm not, going there. I have a soft spot for the veterans, and I don't necessarily want to put them out of business. But that entire operation next door to me is illegal. They know it. I know it. Everybody knows it because it's in black and white. There are a lot of, shenanigans going on, and I'm not going to go into that. There is no need, to stir any laundries here. All I'm asking is for the zoning to do the right thing. Why is it so difficult? Now, there are a few other things that, they have mentioned here. They talked about the authority of the BZA to hear this case. And they mentioned, 15.22311, appeal to the board. This is what the law says. An appeal to the board may be taken by any person aggrieved or by any officer, department, ward, or bureau of the locality affected by any decision of the zoning administrator from any order, requirement, decision, determination made by any other administrative officer in the administration or enforcement of this article. Any ordinance adopted pursuant to this article or any modification of zoning requirement pursuant to blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, you certainly have the authority to hear this case. It's within your purview. And I don't know why they are telling you that you cannot, that you don't have the, the authority to do that. I heard some, other comments, and I want to.
Sir, I want you to be mindful of your time. You're
Okay,
down.
I'm
to 2
sorry.
minutes.
I'm sorry. All right.
You're not
I'll
over.
just stop. I'll just stop. Well, I mean, I think, I've really said, most of the things I wanted to say. The rest of it is rebutting, what they had to say. And This is, where we are. So I'm happy to answer any question.
I'm sure we'll have questions for
Okay.
you. Thank you. Colleagues, we can also ask questions of the applicant, but I do have one speaker, and I think we might as well hear that speaker before we launch into our discussion and question. Thank you very much. I have a speaker slip from Fritz Gottschalk. If you would approach the podium.
Y'all hear me?
I hear you.
Perfect. I'm not sure what Mr. Caltabani submitted to the board, but it was not in the online information. My name is Fritz Gottschalk. I'm a volunteer officer at John Lyon Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 3150. I'm joined by Daryl Smith and Andy Stewart, who are sitting behind me. They are also volunteers that represent our post. In this ongoing dispute/hearing between the county and our neighbor about our post, we often get lost in the shuffle. John Lyon's Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 3150 has been operating in Arlington County since 1935. The post is occupied as existing location at 2116 19th Street North in Arlington since 1945. VFW Post 3150 has over 720 members, all veterans of foreign wars, and 166 auxiliary members. VFW Post 3150 is the last of 5 VFW posts in Arlington and provides a welcoming place for combat veterans to make and sustain connections with other veterans in our unique community, and to afford opportunities for community and veteran service while providing assistance to veterans in obtaining earned benefits. John Lyon Post 3150 also provides support to the military families on Joint Base Fort Myer and Henderson Hall, as well as supporting Arlington's teachers, law enforcement members, and first responders. VFW 3150 operates in Arlington County under use permit U2761-92-1, which was approved by the Arlington County Board on January 19, 1993. That use permit included the parking lot that is in question, part of what's in question. We would like it noted that since 2014, Mr. Kalatabari has approached our post with offers to purchase our property. The first offer was for $1 million. We turned it down. The second offer was for less money and a different property, which we also turned down. The new information that was provided by Mr. Kalatabari, I'm very familiar with it. It's the same information that was provided during his most recent court case, which was dismissed with prejudice by the Circuit Court in Arlington in August. Was it 2024? I'm not sure. Okay. I believe it's 2024. Yep. Just a couple of short notes. Once again, our neighbor has mischaracterized us as a commercial operation. We are a 501c19 nonprofit veteran support organization. We've been that since 1935. He has mischaracterized us as a fraternity. We are a fraternal organization as per our use permit. We were not required to survey our property. We did that on our own because this seems to be very contentious. It's our survey. It's not the county's. This is unfortunately an ongoing effort by our neighbor. This is not frustration. This is harassment and will continue until he gets us to selling his property. He has taken the county zoning office to court twice with regards to our property. Both cases were dismissed. In addition, Mr. Caltabari has repeatedly engaged the zoning office with complaints resulting in at least 3 zoning violations issued to the post. The post has worked to comply with or is working to comply with those multiple violations. The fact that these complaints have resulted in zoning violations show that the zoning office is very active in this case. Unfortunately, our neighbor's complaints are so numerous that we have had to resurvey our property, engage a landscape architect, and engage legal counsel to develop an appropriate response and
Mr.
remedy.
Gottschalk, your time is up. Can you summarize?
I got like 30 seconds left.
We'll ask question, one sentence summary, and we'll ask questions if we need to.
Okay. My summary is we believe that our neighbor has used the courts, the zoning office, and now the Board of Zoning Appeals to harass our organization to gain his goal of purchasing our property. That's our summary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, we can open it up to questions for the applicant. And if we want to, we can question both parties if we have questions. I guess, I don't know if I have I guess this is a question for staff, and I'll start and you jump in because I think I have a lot of different questions, but what should the applicant have done instead of coming to us? You're saying coming to us was the wrong thing, we're the wrong place for his concerns.
It's difficult to answer. I think if the appellant wanted the answer to a zoning question, he could apply for a zoning determination and very clearly get a response and move forward. But to say, every email that we send is a zoning determination is what is the thrust of what we're responding to. But if he had a zoning question that he wanted a specific, analysis, decision made, there's a venue for him to ask for one.
So there was a fee assessed and accepted. There was a fee, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mellis, can I just follow up on that before you move on?
Sure.
Ms. Baum, it would just seem to me that there would be no prejudice in this appellant going and doing that tomorrow.
Correct.
Right. There's no, this is not the case of a typical appeal that we would get where there's a 30-day toll, statutory toll of notice of violation, for example. So in this case, this appellant could go tomorrow and make any number of zoning determination requests, and then you would have, go back and forth with the facts and make a determination. And then if this appellant were unhappy with that, we could be very well back before this board in a few months.
Sure, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Malice. Sorry to interrupt.
So, but the appeal was accepted. The fee was accepted and paid for. So how do you rationalize that in terms of whether we have jurisdiction?
So someone can ask, right? He made his argument. We disagree with it. That doesn't mean we don't accept that he has the right to make that argument.
Okay. All right. More questions, comments?
I have a.
Mr. Kaplan, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think that there is a critical question of whether this is an appealable decision or determination. I mean, I think we do have to answer that because I think it's not something that one can't appeal every statement that comes out of a zoning official's mouth or comes through on the email. And so I do think that, the reason the zoning office puts a disclaimer on their emails is to clarify exactly this question. Obviously, this matter has had a long history of various difficulties, but I do think that, this was not a determination. Determinations are required to say that they can be appealed to the BZA. And this, of course, didn't, because as it says, it's not a determination. So I do think this is beyond what we can consider. I do think the applicant, it is unfortunate because it sounds like there's been a long history of things not being addressed that were raised. But that's my view, is that there wasn't a determination, and that is a threshold question that has to be answered by us first.
Okay.
Ms. Malice.
Mr. Kaplan.
Just to expand on that just a little bit. Um, I am convinced that this is not a zoning determination, right? The question in my mind is it a decision? I'm not entirely sure it is or isn't a decision, but I am a little troubled that this appellant asked specifically if this was a zoning determination and received no response from staff. Right. And then, it does appear to be that, throughout this process, there has been no evidence presented that this appellant was, specifically told, hey, you asked if this is a determination, you filed an appeal, it's not a determination, but here's how you go get one. Right. It seems like there's something going on there. And where that leaves us, I don't know. I go back to my original comment was there is no prejudice to this appellant to now go get his zoning determination letters. And if he's unhappy with any or all of them, then we're here for that exact reason. But like I said, I am a little uncomfortable with, the actual question having been asked, is this a zoning determination letter, and having that sat out there with no response.
How do you define decision versus determination? Because again, decisions are appealable to us as well as determinations appears.
Which I don't believe requires the same notice in 15-2-2311, right? The language I think applies to zoning determinations, not decisions. I could be wrong on that though.
So a decision is going to require a proper request and a proper set of facts upon which to make the decision. It's going to require the proper amount of finality. This letter, this email string has none of that.
But what's your authority for that other than that zoning county policy?
It's all the case law that I've cited in the staff report. We can provide more. It's the statutory authority of that's cited in the staff report as well.
I don't think we're going in a different direction, but I do think that when, decision versus determination, zoning administrator versus officer, or, administrative officer does sort of mix things up a little bit. Remind me again, staff's opinion is that this shouldn't have come to us in the first place because it's not a determination. But a decision could have come to us as well.
Staff's opinion is that this email does not constitute a decision or a determination
either,
and that this board does not have jurisdiction to hear this matter because this email string is not a decision or determination of an administrative officer. So this board does not have jurisdiction to hear it.
To hear it or decide it? Because we're hearing it.
Yeah, excuse me, to decide it. Yes.
Ms. Freshman.
I'm persuaded that it is not an issue for the BZA to decide. And since it's been suggested that the appellant can in fact formally request a determination, that would seem to be the appropriate next step. And with the option to appeal and come back to us if he doesn't like the answer. But I don't see this as being something that we should be deciding, notwithstanding hearing it.
Yeah, Ms. Crafty.
I agree with Ms. Freshman, and I just want to note that I also agree with Mr. Kaplan's comments about there are things that in this record seem to be a little bit troubling in terms of time to look into things. And however, I do think that we don't have I'm familiar with the fact that there's some case law out there about what is an official determination that is appealable. And every comment is not so is not appealable, and that's why they put that on their emails. So I am troubled by some things in the record, but I agree with Ms. Freshman that we don't have an appealable matter before us.
So I think we are moving in the direction that we would make the proposed motion affirming that the zoning administrator has not made a decision or administrative officer to any order, requirement, et cetera. I do believe that that's a direction that sounds like we're going in. The question of whether we have jurisdiction, I don't know that we're required to.
We are not, right.
So I'm proposing that we make the second motion and leave the other one on the table. Because that's a completely different argument that would require a lot more information and discussion.
Ms. Mellis?
Mr. Kaplan?
I was actually thinking about going in the other direction, whereas proposing the first motion, but I'm not comfortable with the third whereas. So I would want to strike the third whereas.
The first motion?
The proposed resolution, yes, the first one. Basically leaving for the reasons stated in the staff report, the BZA finds that the October 15th, 2024 email is not a decision of the zoning administrator as contemplated by VA Code Section 15.2-2311A, and then strike the second whereas, because I'm not comfortable making that determination that the email lacks formality, clarity, and decisiveness as required by the code, because I'm not sure that the code requires that. And then I think the next whereas is really duplicative, right? So I would kind of want to see what my colleagues thought about striking the third and fourth whereas and leave it at that.
Ms. McCroskey?
So that we don't get to the underlying issue.
I would accept those changes. I would also propose that we add another whereas that says, whereas because on its face, the email of October 15th, 2024 from Tracy O'Connor states that it is not an official order, requirement, decision, or determination. The BZA finds that it's not a decision appealable under 15.2-2309.
Yeah, it's a statement of fact. I would agree. Yeah.
I would agree. I would just tweak that to zoning determination, the statutory language.
Could you repeat that?
I would just tweak that slightly to mirror the statutory language of the zoning determination from 2311. I'm looking at it. It is not a decision of the zoning administrator or from any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any other administrative officer in the administration or enforcement of this article.
Oh, well, the entire
Well,
phrase.
I'm sorry, I was taking the language that actually appears in the email itself.
Oh, sure. I understand now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
She's being very specific as to
Yeah,
what.
we were just quoting different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I would agree with that change in addition to my strikes.
All right. Staff, do you understand the changes to the whereases? We're asking Ms. Ryan. All right,
Okay.
let's see if we can't clarify one more time. What page were we on?
We are on 5.
5. Okay, so you are
Bottom of 5.
Yeah, you're striking which whereases?
The third and fourth whereas.
Okay, the 3rd and 4th, all right. And Ms. McCroskey is adding a 5th if the 3rd and 4th weren't.
Yeah,
Struck.
it becomes the third.
It becomes the
So,
3rd.
yeah. Stating that because on its face, the email from Tracy O'Connor states that it's not an official order, requirement, decision, or determination. That email is not appealable pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-2309.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Ms. Malice.
Mr. Kaplan?
I just want to reiterate what I had said, during the hearing portion of this, and that I was a little uncomfortable with some of the non-response with the appellant's asking of his question of whether this was actually a zoning determination. But in this case, it's not. There's no prejudice to the appellant by dismissing this under the motion, and then the appellant can go from there. My position might be different under a different set of facts where there was a 30-day tolling of an appeal of a actual zoning determination or non-zoning determination, but that's not this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. And so, Ms. Vaughn, there is a section on the county's website, on the zoning website, that describes the steps that a person would take to request a zoning administrator determination.
Yes, there is.
Okay, so the appellant could refer to that and start that process immediately. Okay. Anything further? I will.
Did we? Oh.
Am
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I missing something?
No.
Okay. The matter is with
No.
the board now. We're concluding. If you have questions about what we did, you may check with staff, with BZA staff, and they can fill you in. Okay. So we have a motion's been made by Mr. Kaplan.
Nope.
Nope. Motion's been made by.
I think I made the last amendment.
You made the
It's my
amendment.
motion.
So,
Or-
well, Ms. Freshman made the motion,
Okay.
right? We amended the motion both by Mr. Kaplan and by Ms. McCroskey. And was there a second to the motion?
I think Ms. Freshman seconded it.
I was the second.
So, okay,
I don't know who was the first.
I missed that.
I've lost count.
It was not me. I was just talking
No,
about a
Ms.
proposed motion.
McCroskey made the motion.
Did I? I may have.
Let's start over again. Ms. McCroskey has made a motion.
Yes, I will move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed resolution in V1202224 APP1 as amended by the discussion of the BZA, including striking the second and
The
third and fourth whereases and adding a new whereas read into the record by myself.
Okay, it's good we make sure we got this. And do we have a second, Ms.
I'll
Freshman?
second again.
Okay. The motion has been made by Ms. Krosky as amended and seconded by Ms. Freshman. I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion passes on a vote of 5-0, and that concludes this matter. Thank you, everyone.
Ms. Malice.
Mr. Kaplan?
I move approval of the minutes from the December 18th, 2024 BZA hearing.
The minutes have been moved.
I'm sorry,
Sec-
December 18th.
I'll second.
Minutes were moved by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Freshman. I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The minutes are adopted on a vote of 5-0. I believe our agenda having been completed, this meeting is adjourned.